Let's go. Hey, 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 let's go.
All right, a Thursday edition of The Zone right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. It is draft day, finally arrived. It has been a while since the Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl. That was a rough one. Free agency hits, draft season, and now the draft is here, and maybe the time to officially turn the page to the next year, this next crop of players to come in to the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll get to meet them, whoever they draft tonight. If they draft somebody tonight, we'll meet them via Zoom and press conference, and then whoever they draft tomorrow and on into Saturday, and then next week in the rookie minicamp when you get to see them in person. At least the media members get to see them in person and talk to them, and press conferences and things like that. It is draft day, and for draft day, we are hanging out at Hollywood Casino, where you can come and check out the draft and take part in some of the lines that are going on, some of the betting things that you may have a little bit more than a rooting interest for the Chiefs, trade-ups, trade-backs. Great spot, great bar, food and everything here at Hollywood Casino in the Sportsbook, where you can watch the draft and hang out and do some other things and, you know, play some blackjack and pass the time, some roulette. I don't know, maybe roll the dice a little bit. Some teams are going to be rolling the dice, as they say. Am I right? Oh, my goodness. They're going to be going all in, you know, playing some poker there. They're going to hit on 16 just to take a chance to play, you know, wild card guy. You know, you never know who's going to be the wild card guy. I cut the brakes. Wild card guy. No, Charlie, we don't need a wild card in this group. There's going to be a wild card tonight. We'll find out who that is, but we are hanging out today. You can come down, say hi, get some goodies, and enjoy and, grab your spot early for the NFL draft. And a man that was drafted just, 4 years ago, I guess it was, the 2021 NFL draft, second-round pick, a man by the name of Nick Bolton. The Chiefs draft him, linebacker out of Missouri. And what I love about the draft and being able to look back, and especially when the Chiefs have had success that they've had, is that you can look back and remember the night not knowing what we were going to watch and have the highlight for a lifetime of Nick Bolton scooping and scoring in the Super Bowl against the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, and an almost second scoop and score touchdown for Nick Bolton that was called back because the referees go out of their way to make sure the Chiefs get every call. They took a touchdown off the board in that Super Bowl. But they draft Nick Bolton, and it was, to a degree, it was controversial. And because people didn't want a linebacker there. They wanted other pieces. There were some wide receivers that were there that people liked. But I bring up Nick Bolton because at 5 o'clock today, we are going to be giving away a Nick Bolton signed Chiefs jersey. You've got to be here to sign up. You don't have to be present to win, but you do have to come here to Hollywood Casino to register. So at 5 o'clock when we do the drawing, somebody that comes here today and registers to win this Nick Bolton signed jersey will win that. Can't do it online, can't do it by calling in, you can't phone a friend, you can't do any of that stuff. You've got to be here to register, and at 5 o'clock we will be doing the drawing and giving away that Nick Bolton jersey, and that's a pretty cool deal there just for hanging out, watching the draft, and thinking back to a couple of amazing draft picks that have taken place and have been selected by the Chiefs. Obviously, the greatest one in Chiefs history being 2017, trading up to number 10 to take Patrick Mahomes. And the rest, as they say, is history.
I was there, man.
You were there?
I was there, man.
You were there at that draft? Was that in Philly?
That actually was. I was there at that draft.
Okay.
I ran in flip-flops back from my house.
Oh, that's right, because you were like...
right outside my house,
you were
actually.
like, bleep yes, Deshaun Watson, baby.
No,
They're trading up. Deshaun Watson is the man. He's going to be amazing. I really hope they don't take that turnover gunslinger Patrick Mahomes. Nobody ever succeeds out of that offense. He sucks with his stupid hair and his dumb voice and all of his turnovers. He's going to be terrible. Deshaun Watson or bust, baby. Is that what you got that on video, right?
No, I thought they were trading up for Deshaun Watson.
I was
personally
praying that it was for Patrick Mahomes.
But then they drafted Patrick, and I was a few adult beverages deep, and I was even more thrilled because I'm like, okay, we got a guy who can put up some points here. We got a guy who has the untapped potential of a Brett Favre, of the elite of the elite. I thought Watson had more of the floor. I don't know if
Watson was a better character guy, though. That's the thing. Is off the field, you were going to get more out of Deshaun. Well, community guy.
Well, I go
really great in the community for Deshaun Watson.
If you have Alex Smith, you can take a shot on someone who might have a little more upside, and that was Patrick. And by the way, just for folks wondering, with the Nick Bolton pick of the wide receivers that went around Nick Bolton,
who was the guy that went to the Panthers?
Dwayne Eskridge, Tutu Atwell, Terrence Marshall Jr.
Terrence Marshall Jr.
went
was the
right
one
after. Josh Palmer and Diami Brown.
No, Terrence Marshall
and Amari Rogers.
No, Terrence Marshall was the one that people were hoping the Chiefs would get in the second round. He went after Nick Bolton, but before Creed, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so Terrence Marshall after Nick Bolton. It might have been the next pick, right? It was close.
It was the next pick.
Yeah, because it was like
Nick. 59 was Terrence.
It's like, oh my God,
sorry, Terrace.
Yeah, Terrace Marshall's on the board here with the Chiefs selecting. You got to take this guy. And they took Nick Bolton. It was like, oh, that's why did they take Bolton over Terrace Marshall Jr.? Thank God they did.
Look at those wide receivers in that range, though, around Bolton. You could have had Dwayne Eskridge, Tutu Atwell, Terrace Marshall Jr. You could have had Josh Palmer or Diami Brown.
I mean, Josh Palmer is amazing against the Chiefs, but he wouldn't be able to play against the Chiefs if he was on the Chiefs, so it wouldn't be the same.
Or Amari Rogers. Those were the players, wide receivers in that range, and the Chiefs made the right choice.
I'm glad they went with Nick Bolton and then Creed Humphrey right after that. So a couple of phenomenal draft picks. 2013, Travis Kelce being selected by Andy Reid. Chris Jones in 2016 trading back because Paxton Lynch was no longer on the board because the Broncos traded ahead of the Chiefs to take Paxton Lynch. Mwah. Thank you, Denver Broncos. Unanswered prayers, as they say. You know, as I was praying for Patrick Mahomes to be drafted at number 10 instead of Deshaun Watson, you know, I always, it's the C, E, and D Catholic. Christmas, Easter, and draft. You go to mass on Christmas, you go to mass on Easter, and you pray a lot on draft night that you get your guy, or the guy falls, or you trade up or trade back, or that guy turns out to be a great player. So today is one of those. If you're a C and E and D Catholic, then today is one of those days. It's the next 3 days, really. You got 3 days of mass that you can enjoy it. But yes, Patrick Mahomes in 17. Heck, you know what? You can even talk about McCole Hardman in 2019. The guy caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago against the 49ers. I mean, they traded to get him after letting him walk, but still, you get the point. And obviously that phenomenal 2022 draft, which has really helped catapult this dynasty, that draft class has never not played in a Super Bowl, right? It's like Troy Polamalu, never not working. Never not working. That draft class has never not played in a Super Bowl. And even last year or 2 years ago with Rashee Rice in the second round, helping them win a Super Bowl against the 49ers, Xavier Worthy last year. So tonight we'll find out who the Chiefs take or don't take, how this draft is going to unfold. And we're here at Hollywood Casino where you can come down and play some bets like, boy, we talked about Luther Burden yesterday, right? You can get him right now at plus 300 to go in the first round.
I like it.
He was like minus 2,000 during the season last year to be a first-round draft pick. Now he's plus 300.
Well, wouldn't you be surprised personally if he gets even past 31? Like I feel like if he's there at 31, the Chiefs would take him.
I don't know how. I mean, obviously, Vegas doesn't think he's going to be a first-rounder, or he would have minus odds on him.
I don't know, man. Vegas is in the business of losing money.
They are
in the business.
Free money is what it's typically
their
called.
slogan.
Yeah, that's why they call it Lost Vegas. You know, it's not Win Vegas; it's Lost Vegas.
How do you think they built all those buildings? You know why?
Yeah,
it was actually on
financing.
a loan. It was a loan. Yeah, it was financing.
They financed it. They got a lot of tax breaks and stuff. It was. Public financing. It was public money that they got. That's the reason.
Taxes.
100%, man. You don't just build those buildings and pay for it out of your own pocket. You get tax breaks for all those things. It's just sports is what it is. But no, we've got a jam-packed show today as well. Coming up an hour from now, we will talk with Kent Swanson, KC Sports Network, KC Laboratory Podcast. We'll hang out with Daniel Harms coming up in the noon hour, the Draft Network, RGR Football. Daniel Harms does a great job scouting. He's been doing it for a while and has, 50 different scouting reports on different players that are going to be in this draft. We'll talk with him about things he'd like to see the Chiefs do, players that he likes, maybe doesn't like, if he has a draft crush, things like that, and who he thinks the Chiefs will take. And then also coming up about 12:35 or so, we're going to talk with Evan Kraft. Over a decade with the Kansas City Chiefs as an assistant athletic trainer, and now part of the Sports Med Bros podcast with Aaron Borgman, who also worked with the Chiefs. But Evan Kraft, 3 Super Bowl rings in working with the Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll talk with him about some of these players that are in the draft that have some injury concerns. Obviously, Josh Simmons is one that is hotly debated, especially around here. Do you take a chance on a guy that maybe would have been top 15 or a top 10 draft if it was not for the injury, that now could still be top 15, top 20, or could be there at 31, or could slide to the second round because there is just simply more of an unknown and there isn't a historical confidence of returning from a patellar rupture that he had earlier in the season. So it's not like this happened in the playoffs in January or anything like that, but still earlier in the season, and it's still something that does not have a great track record of success to return to high-level play. He's younger, so maybe that plays some sort of a role. We talked about Gerard Mayo. We've talked about other players. Heck, Lucas Niang for the Chiefs. I mean, he was the starting right tackle for the Chiefs until that Cincinnati Bengals game. And then Orlando Brown sprains his ankle in warm-ups, and they have to move Niang over to left tackle, and he ruptures his patellar tendon. Niang has been a special teamer since then. They went out and got Jawan Taylor.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a guy that at KO, ruptures a patellar tendon, offensive lineman on a.
Did Martinez Rankin? Was that also his?
I think it might have been Martinez. Right? KO might have been just ACLs, but I think that it was either Rankin or it was KO.
I think it was Martinez Rankin. Let me confirm that. Because
but there were a couple offensive linemen for the Chiefs that have had this injury that we haven't seen really return to what they were before. And at least Lucas Niang was starting, and if it was KO, then he was definitely starting. But because I know both of his knees were torn up on the same play, which was ridiculous because he was called for holding on a play before that. That was a Tyreek Hill touchdown. That wasn't a hold, and they had to play another play, and that's when he messed up his knees against the Raiders. But so we'll talk with Evan Kraft about that. Also, there's a couple of other players. There's a defensive tackle that during the season was viewed as one of the top defensive tackles in the draft. And as the draft process was going on, it was like, this guy could be a first-round draft pick. And now he has slid all the way to maybe a day 3. And that's Deion Walker from Kentucky. And a defensive tackle is something the Chiefs would be interested in taking. But it was also discovered at the Combine he had a stress fracture in his back last year and was playing through it.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a guy who's carrying 350 pounds as a defensive tackle with a back injury? Well, no wonder he's sliding all the way to Saturday, because there was some production issue, and he's saying the production is directly related to the back, and now he's fully healthy. Okay, well, if the medicals pass, are you going to get a steal on Saturday, somebody that might have been drafted on Thursday or early Friday if it wasn't for the production drop-off because he said it was related to the back? Also, was it related to the back, or is that being used as an excuse and saying, no, you need to draft me higher because I'm going to get back to the guy that people thought was a first-round draft pick defensive tackle? And then one of the guys that's going to be drafted in the top 20 this year is Michigan cornerback Will Johnson.
Yeah.
Who, one thing that I'm really curious to ask Evan about is there something as an injury-prone player? Is it just circumstance? Because Will Johnson played 26 games his first 2 years, and last year only played 5. Hurt his shoulder, missed a game, came back, and then got turf toe and missed the rest of the season. Then preparing for the Combine, tears his hamstring, misses the Combine and Michigan's Pro Day. So he's had a shoulder, a turf toe, and a hamstring injury since early November. Is that unlucky? Just a guy because he's still going to go top 20.
Yeah.
But it's a question of because he was the number 1 defensive player entering the season this year. He was going to be a Travis Hunter cornerback taken in the top 5. And now he's not going to be the first cornerback taken. It's probably Barron. That's going to be one of the first cornerbacks off the board. But it's mainly because of, one, top-end speed from Will Johnson, but also the guy's a shoulder, a turf toe, and then also a hamstring injury. So do you trust the medicals? And if you do, are you going to get a stud cornerback that should have been a top 10 pick maybe at 18, 19, or 20? But I don't know if there's something as hey, man, this guy's body, known around the athletic training community, this guy's body's just not going to hold up. And we've seen that early in college. Now wait till he gets in the NFL where he's got to cut harder, quicker, faster, going up against bigger players, going to have to try to run faster, work harder to cover these guys. You got to have quicker twitches in and out of breaks. I don't know if that's the case or if it's just unlucky.
Well, what it seems to me is it doesn't really – we always talk about body size and small guys, can they stay healthy? And I don't really think there's a ton of correlation between – I mean, Xavier Worthy in college, knock on wood, was always healthy, and he was a very small guy. You'll see guys who – big-body dudes who get perpetually injured. Sammy Watkins was...
Jamal Charles will never be able to last in the NFL. He's going to get banged up. Okay, he had an unfortunate ACL where he slipped on a damn line marker on the sideline.
Sure, and so what it comes
down... But he was healthy is what I mean.
Yeah, and so for me what it comes down to is I don't know if it's body type that you can really tell. I do think there's a situation where once you get one injury, it's very easy for them to start piling up. For example, say you have turf toe, like Will Johnson did. Okay, well, now you take all that time off. Your hamstrings, you're not working out. You're not going to be in the same, shape. And so all of a sudden, now you're trying to give it a full go for, let's say, the combine. You're trying to really ramp it back up. Well, all of a sudden, you weren't doing anything because you had turf toe. Well, now all of a sudden, your hamstring goes because you haven't been working on your hamstrings. You haven't been doing your typical workouts. And so I think once one injury happens, it is very easy for them to start piling up and compiling. I don't think it's injury prone necessarily. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but I think there's a situation where once one injury happens, you are more likely to, I think, a lot of times I think it's because of time off.
Yeah, and a connected injury. Like, okay, I'm favoring this, and therefore now I'm favoring my right ankle, and now my left knee is going to be hurting because I'm favoring my right ankle or something along those lines. Or to your point, you can't work out, and now it's your job. You have the biggest job interview of your life that you've been working your whole life for, the combine, and you've missed the second part of the season because of turf toe, and now the turf toe is healthy, and now I got to get ready for the combine.
Yes.
And early February, now you mess up your hamstring. Maybe you were pushing a little bit too hard to go and try to get a good time in the 40 because top-end speed is something that's a question for your overall athletic profile.
And then something like Ronnie Stanley had the ankle, which led to the knee, which led back to the ankle. Well, again, it got somewhat connected,
yeah, right.
But – yeah, I think there's something to that. Sammy Watkins, for example, I think we're all kind of have some PTSD when you hear hamstring. As far as that, I think that was maybe a little differing circumstances there. I do think maybe some guy, maybe injury prone is the right word, but maybe just more
susceptible to injuries. Your body type is more susceptible to having injuries or suffering injuries.
Sure.
I don't know. We'll talk with him coming up about 12:35 or so. And then we'll hear a couple of chunks that I cut up from our interview with Field Yates and Cynthia Freeland earlier in the week as it relates to tonight's draft. So 913-912-4810 is the text line. 913-912-4810 is the text line. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, continue rolling. We are hanging out here at Hollywood Casino. We'll be here till 2 o'clock. Sports Radio 810 will be here till 5 o'clock. And at 5 o'clock, we're going to do the drawing for this Nick Bolton signed Chiefs jersey. You've got to be here to register. You don't have to be present to win, but be here, register, fill out the registration form, and at 5 o'clock we'll do the drawing for that Nick Bolton autographed Chiefs jersey. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back and continue rolling. On the other side, I want to get into, there are some prospects, some players that are highly debated as to overperforming or underperforming what their draft position might be. And I do want to get into a conversation and see if there's a particular player that we think will outperform where people have projected him to go, and maybe a player or two that won't live up to what the hype and the excitement is around that player. We'll do that on the other side of the break. I got a couple of guys that I don't think will live up to the hype that I would be worried about selecting. And one particular player that I would love the Chiefs to get their hands on that I think will outperform where he may go, depending on where he actually goes. Who knows? This guy that I think will outperform may go number 9. May go number 8. Who knows? We'll do that on the other side of the break. 913-912-4810 is the text line. You can weigh in as well with some of those. If you've got a player that you think is going to be lesser than, that won't live up to the hype, or a player that you think is not getting enough attention that this guy's going to be, Pro Bowler, potential All-Pro type player. Kent Swanson coming up at 11 o'clock, Daniel Harms at noon, Evan Kraft 12:30, and we continue rolling along on this Draft Day Thursday edition of The Zone at Sports Radio 810 WHB. All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB, hanging out at Hollywood Casino. Draft day around the NFL. We'll be here till 2 o'clock. Sports Radio 810. Be here till 5 o'clock when we'll be doing the drawing with the Nick Bolton autographed jersey that will be given away. It is at Hollywood Casino. And don't forget to show your game day ticket for both Sporting KC and the Monarchs at Player Services, and you can claim up to $10 pen cash for each game, those home games only, but for each game you show your ticket when you're here. And race weekend right around the corner, the 9th through the 11th, right before we head out to Blue Hills for the Advent Health Championship. So, you got race weekend, you got golf weekend right after that. So check that out and the different apps that you can use with the Pin Play. That's here at Hollywood Casino.
It's a great time. No, sorry, but just kind of go with that. It's a great time. You mentioned, Sporting KC games or Monarchs. Yeah. What I did actually was when USA played Canada, they had that, like the little tune-up game, whatever it was, here at Sporting KC. We came here before and after, and they had shuttles. Like, it was awesome. They do a really good job here at Hollywood Casino if you go to let's say, like a Sporting game or a Monarchs game. It's a really fun time. We had some good specials on drinks, too, and we went and played some
already, like 10 minutes ago? Okay, when you came here.
When we came here, and I ended up getting my Pin Play rewards card and got checked in. We played some blackjack, and
got some 12s and 13s.
I actually did pretty good that day, and then we came here. It was a great day. Besides Team USA losing to Canada, that was really frustrating. But then we had you're here in the draft room almost. You're right here with this wall of TVs, and you threw some bets in. No, I had a great time. I highly recommend if you're going to a Monarchs or a Sporting KC game, stopping by Hollywood Casino before or after. You will not be disappointed.
See, the Monarchs just signed?
Oh, yeah, baby.
Yeah, Jake Brent's back in Kansas City. The little lefty, Jake Brent. He had a hell of a season 2 years ago, man. And then got injured last year. But that dude was nails 2 years ago for the Royals.
I felt so bad for him because there was a story about how, he never got like a great opportunity, I thought, in KC. Then he went to, I think, Atlanta, and it never panned out. And so maybe it wasn't all the Royals' fault.
Yeah, decent opportunity. But then the injury happens, and it's like, all right, man, you got to move on. Plus, there's such a volatility when it comes to bullpen arms, man. 913-912-4810. All right, let's get into some of these prospects. And these don't have to necessarily relate to the Chiefs. Maybe they can be through the Chiefs' prism. I didn't view it through specifically through the Chiefs. Just as overall a player or two in the draft that I think can outperform where the particular player may be going, or underperform and underwhelm and maybe not live up to what some of the excitement is for that particular player. So do we want to start with the won't live up to first and then get into the outperform?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, let's do that. Dylan, do you have one of each as well, just in case?
Yeah.
I'm not there to look at. I just want to make sure that we were all on the same page. I didn't want to go to you and you're like, oh, bleep, I'm just going to make up a name. Johnny Rockerson, I don't think is going to – in fact, I don't even think he's going to get drafted. He's on
John Rocker's son, Johnny Rockerson.
It's like Al Leiterson, Al Leiter's son was all Jack Leiter was ever called at Vanderbilt. It's like, oh, Jack Leiter's Al Leiter's son. I'm like, so let's just call him Al Leiterson then, because that's how we know him. All right, just calling him Jack Leiter, nobody's going to connect the two. It's Al Leiterson. All right, that's his name. So yeah, John Rockerson is that guy. So let's get into it. I'll go first because I think this is one to where people may offer a lot of pushback. I think there's a mistake that's going to be made tonight by a team that drafts Ashton Genty in the top 10.
Oh, man.
I don't think Ashton Genty will be as good as a lot of the consensus is with him as a running back. I know this is a deep running back class, and he's the head of this particular class. I think he's a really good player. I do think there's some Maurice Jones-Drew, the bowling ball type. He's got some explosiveness. I just worry about how good he's going to be, the expectations of how good he's going to be, as if they are drafting Saquon Barkley. Whoever drafts him is trading up to get Saquon. I don't think you're getting Saquon Barkley. I think you're getting a good running back, but also in today's NFL, you're going to spend the capital of a top 10 pick and maybe a team trading up, spending even more capital of a top 10 pick to take a running back. I don't see it the way that a lot of people see it with Ashton Genty. I don't think he's going to be as good as a lot of the maybe a number of people, the consensus, the majority of people think that he's going to be a running back that's going to be a massive difference maker, like Saquon was for the Eagles. Saquon was for the Eagles when they've had Jalen Hurts, that defense, A.J. Brown, that offensive line, Devontae Smith, they had that. A team saying Ashton Genty is the Saquon Barkley that's going to turn our team around. Without that surrounding and supporting cast, the most hilarious thing would be the Giants trading back and taking Genty.
That would be
after
phenomenal.
not signing Saquon and then taking a running back in the first round in the top 10 would be hilarious. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's my first one. That's the one that stands out the most to me. Is like I don't see it in terms of the value that you're giving up for Genty.
Thanks, I hate it. I do think that
You take him number one overall?
No, but I do think that you could get a little bit. I don't think Saquon, but if you're talking about what Saquon's did in New York, I mean, they took him to the playoffs with Daniel Jones as the quarterback, and he was a big part of
Danny
that.
Dimes to you.
So I do think that to an extent that an elite game-changing running back can still make a difference. I don't think he's Saquon, but would he be a top 5 running back right now? In the NFL? Like, do I think he'd be top 5? I think the answer is yes. I'm actually in on Ashton Genty. I'm not going to say he's in either one of my categories here, but
it'd be tough for him to be outperforming what people think already.
Like, I think he's going to
have to be Walter Payton.
I think he's going to go for maybe 1,100, 1,200 rush yards this year, maybe 8, 9 touchdowns. I'm all in. By the way,
so he's going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Shameless plug. You can listen to the interview I did with Ashton Genty on Around the NFL.
There it is, Dylan. My bad. I didn't realize you had a personal connection to him. I didn't realize you guys were boys.
On Around the NFL with Sterling Holmes. You can check that out on the 810 podcast.
Is that already dropped?
That dropped a couple days ago. Clay Matthews is dropping today.
Nice.
But yeah, Ashton Genty. So it just folks listening.
Clay Matthews is going to be at the draft tonight?
Yes, he is.
Very cool. Very cool. So you're in disagreement on the Ashton Genty point, but who's the player that won't live up to the hype for you?
So I have 2. I'll go with.
I've got 2 as well, but I just wanted to go with my first one there.
I'll go with my first one, which I don't know if it's a hot take or not. I just don't believe in Cam Ward. I just don't believe in him.
He's going to go number 1.
I think the variance of Cam Ward is too great. I think once pressure hits him, which he didn't have pressure when he was at Miami, I think it's going to be a big difference for him. I to an extent, believe in the arm. I'm not a huge Cam Ward believer. I guess I just personally didn't see it. And maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. But with Cam, I do understand why Tennessee is taking Cam Ward, by the way. I get it. When you're in the AFC, you want the higher upside guy. I think Shedeur Sanders has a higher floor, personally. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to be a safe pick. I think he's actually going to be a guy that you're like, you know what? He's an NFL caliber quarterback. Is he great? No, he's not. Is he atrocious? No, he is not. He's fine.
He's fine.
I think Cam Ward, though, when you're in the AFC, you got to take a chance on a guy who has the higher upside because you're going up against Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert,
Lamar Jackson.
You're going up against the best quarterbacks. Fine's not going to be good enough. As we saw with the Raiders forever with a guy like Derek Carr.
Fine's going to get you almost or right in the playoffs to lose.
Yes, and so I'm sitting here going, I think the Saints should draft Shedeur because Fine's good enough in the NFC South.
Yeah.
Fine ain't good enough in Tennessee. So in the AFC. So I get why they're drafting him. I just don't believe in Cam Ward.
Cam Ward to me is interesting because so often, it's like the 2 separate highlights of Cam Ward.
Yes.
There's some highlights of him that he is baking a cake in the backfield. Nobody around him. He's just standing there, nothing, not moving, just looking around, and then finally making. Then there's the highlights of him being Patrick Mahomes-esque in sliding around, the slipping through the arm tackles, the jumping back, the making those crazy throws and highlight-worthy plays. Like, you get both of those from Cam Ward. The consistency, though, is missing, and this is one of those to where you are going to have to take the projectability that you think you will coach him to be. More of the fundamentals will come out in the footwork and some of those things, and it won't just be a guy that is looking for the home run each play. But I'm in agreement. If I'm in the AFC, Cam Ward is the quarterback I'm taking out of this group. Tyler Jackson Dart scares me. People look at him and compare him to Bo Nix. He's not.
I love him if he goes to the Rams at 26.
I would love Jackson Dart to be to the Raiders. Like, honestly, I want the Raiders to take Jackson Dart or Ashton. I want the Raiders to trade up to get Ashton Genty. That's what I want them to do. I want them to trade up to get Ashton Genty. Or take another tight end. Why not?
I was laughing. I go, they could use a running back. They could use a quarterback, so they take another tight end.
I think that would be great if they did that. So I think Cam Ward is a really interesting one because there is such. The word you used, I think, is the correct one. The appropriate one is variance to his game. He might be the ultimate boomer bust quarterback that, oh, my God, this guy is unbelievable. Look at all the plays he's making. And then, oh, my God, this guy's feet are everywhere. He's crossing. He's falling backwards. He's throwing interceptions. We'll see what happens there. I think
you hope he's C.J. Stroud. I think that's what you hope.
Yeah. And we'll see if he ends up being that. Dylan, do you have a player that you don't think will live up to some of the hype or the expectation into how high he may be selected tonight?
So I actually had Cam Ward as well, but I picked another player because I didn't know if we were allowed to do the quarterbacks, so I had him. But I think that for different reasons, more so like Tennessee has no reason. They just hired Mike Borgonzi, so he has no pressure as like the Giants do to take a quarterback in this draft. So I don't know why everyone just assumes he's going there when you could just take Travis Hunter, wait, be maybe bad again, and then get Arch Manning. And then you have an actual quarterback.
March for Arch?
Yeah. I mean, why would you not hitch your wagon to Arch Manning? I mean, obviously everything's not, set in stone. You can't just produce another number 1 overall pick like you got this year. But I just don't think Cam Ward is that much better to where you can overlook Travis Hunter. Like, I think they should take Travis Hunter. And I think my shocking prediction is that they do tonight and that everyone is thrown off by That's what I think they should do, and that's why I'm making this prediction, is that I think that it would be smarter to take Travis Hunter and not reach for a quarterback that everyone says really wouldn't be a number 1 overall pick in this draft if there was Drew Aller or Arch Manning or anyone from next year's class that is supposed to go really high. So
it just sort of depends. Like I know that what Tennessee views him as a cornerback and then a wide receiver. Cleveland views him as a wide receiver and then also a cornerback. I've said, I'm on record. I think he's a cornerback that you can use different packages on wide receiver for him.
Yeah.
But
I agree with that.
Play every down at cornerback and then use him as a specific package wide receiver. It's tough to play him as an every down wide receiver and then, we're going to use him in specific packages as a cornerback.
I think you should
Unless you want that guy to play 120 plays per game. Go ahead, Dylan. Sorry.
No, I was saying, like, you should do the Deion Cowboys situation where he was playing some snaps on offense, but he was their lockdown corner, and then you were able to use, Kevin Smith all over the field. But, like, a lockdown corner and wide receiver is more valuable than Cam Ward, in my opinion. And also, they were trying to shop that pick in the beginning, and then they are going to keep it. And I think that's where everyone assumed that they're going Cam Ward. But maybe, and this is where I'm kind of, this is my tinfoil hat prediction. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm hoping it happens because I think it's a smart move. But maybe they watched the tape on Travis Hunter and decided to keep the pick, not Cam Ward. So. But my other pick was going to be Kelvin Banks just because of the fact that everyone says this is a tackle light draft, and he would be the 3rd one off the board in the teens of that first round. So you'd already have Membu and Will Campbell off the board. So I'm saying at principle and what everyone's saying, that would be a reach and probably not going to live up to expectations in the top 15.
By the way, you do believe that – go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
you finish your thought. You finish your – no, you go. No, you hang up. No, you hang up. No, you hang up.
I was going to say basically that, like Membu and Will Campbell are already gone. So basically you're taking the 3rd best tackle in a light draft at 50.
Yeah,
what are you going to say,
That's interesting. No, I was going to go back to the Travis Hunter thing and say if you have some little conviction on that, Travis Hunter to go number 1 is plus 5,000 right now.
Yeah. He's shorter odds than Jaden Daniels was last year. And remember, there was a kind of a little toss-up at the end. Everyone knew eventually he was going to take Caleb Williams, but I just remember there was some, who knew? So.
Yeah, my second one that I had along with Ashton Genty is Jalen Walker from Georgia. That could be a top 15, could be a top 10 pick because it's like, man, this guy is so physically, athletically gifted. He could be an edge rusher. He could be an inside linebacker. He could be an off-ball linebacker. He's 6'2", 240. He's got the speed. And everything that you hear about him is like, the versatility of all these things he can do. Man, 6'2", 240 as an edge rusher scares me. when he's not as experienced as an edge rusher. And it's like, well, yeah, he's got a lot of refining that he needs to be done. An outside linebacker, well, he's physically gifted, but maybe lateral quickness isn't the best part of his game. So is that going to lack in coverage skills? And if he's playing sort of in the middle, inside, maybe in a 3-4, he does sort of feel like a magnet to blockers at times. Like, I hear Isaiah Simmons. And sorry to go with a local kid, who, by the way, I want the Chiefs to sign. I want the Chiefs to sign Isaiah Simmons. I'm on record with that because that's a special teams stud. And let Spags try to figure it out. I hear Jalen Walker and all the things that are being talked about him, and I get PTSD of Isaiah Simmons. You can put Isaiah Simmons at edge. You can put him at middle. You can put him outside. You can put him in the slot. You can play him at safety. You can do so many things. He is a physical freak that can do everything on a football field. He is just going to be a chess piece, and nobody has figured out how to unlock, how to tap into that potential. I think that's going to be Jalen Walker in the NFL. I think we're going to be hearing about, maybe that size of being a smaller guy and not having the lateral side-to-side quickness to cover in the NFL as an off-ball linebacker, maybe his instincts in the game to go and make the tackle. Like, he ain't Abdul Carter. You know what I mean? Like, it's light years difference between Abdul Carter and Jalen Walker. I have some concerns of Jalen Walker going in the top 15. Now, if he's there at 31, I have different concerns. I wouldn't mind, because at 31, okay, now you're starting to get into, well, the value's too good because of the potential that's there of how great he could be. I just think if you're taking him in the top 15, top 10, and you're expecting a lighter version of Abdul Carter, I think you're wishing in one hand and taking a crap in the other. And I know which one will fill up first.
My wishes.
That's right. Do you have your other one, and then we'll break and we'll talk about it? Players that
by the way,
outperform.
I would like Isaiah Simmons with Spags. That seems very, very fun.
But he's a stud special teamer.
Yes.
And with the kickoffs being even more important now,
and a coverage linebacker,
you lose Justin Watson, who was your 4-phase special teamer as well. Like, yeah, I would love Isaiah Simmons on this team. Anyway, go ahead.
I don't know if this one's going to be pretty hot, and I sorry, Dylan. I actually think Travis Hunter is the guy I'm going with.
Whoa, that's absurd.
And hear me out. Hear me out. I think he's going to be good. I don't think he's going to be this elite, all-time great, which is what he's getting tabbed as. I think everyone is so caught up in playing both offense and defense that I think he ends up being a top 25, top 30 corner, probably top 30, top 40 wide receiver, but he's not going to play every single snap, and some team's going to have to figure out which one is he going to play the majority at, and then the value is just not going to be quite there like it was in college. I think he's going to be a good player. I do. I just don't think he's going to be this immense weapon that I think a lot of people think he's going to be. He's not CeeDee Lamb offensively. He's not Justin Jefferson as a wide receiver. I don't think he's Trent McDuffie or like a Jalen Ramsey on defense.
He's not Surtain.
Or Surtain. So I'm sitting here going, okay, I was great in college when he plays almost every single snap. I just don't see that in the NFL. So, okay, you're getting a really good player. I just don't think you're getting this maybe historic player that a lot of people think they're going to be getting. That's my pushback.
Let's take a timeout. We'll come back, and we'll just let that one go, Dylan, because, I mean, what a dummy.
I said it's going to be good. I just don't think it's going to be historic. I don't think it's going to be.
We'll let it go because of my take. We'll let it bury my take of them taking Travis Hunter over Cam Ward. So.
Yeah. We'll take a time out. I do want to get into, I know we'll have a limited amount of time, but we got other time during the show as well to get into some players that we think will outperform some of the expectations. We'll continue from Hollywood Casino. We'll talk with Kent Swanson coming up at 11 o'clock, who his draft crush is, what he would like to see the Chiefs do tonight, his breakdown of this draft class. We talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and now we're honing in more into the lying season, smoke screens, hashtag smoke screen going on the last couple days, week or so. So we'll talk with Ken Swanson coming up at 11 o'clock. More Zone right after this. Michaels. We head up until 2 o'clock. Coming up at 5 o'clock today, so we'll be here till 2, but at 5 o'clock, Sports Radio 810 will be here this afternoon. At 5 o'clock, we're going to do the drawing for the Nick Bolton autographed Chiefs jersey. You do have to be here to register, so stop by Hollywood Casino, fill out your registration form real quick, and we'll do the drawing at 5 o'clock. Somebody that comes here today will win this Nick Bolton autographed, beautiful Kansas City Chiefs jersey. Nick Bolton, he ain't going anywhere, signing his contract extension.
And it won't be me. So
why not?
Think of that.
Well, I've already got a Nick Bolton Mizzou signed jersey at home, so
nice.
I don't need. I guess I could put the Mizzou one right next, or the Chiefs one right next to it.
I'm not allowed to, so I was trying to be a gentleman and be like, "Hey, I'm just so you know, I can't cheat and
I see what you're saying.
And have myself win. I'm not going to do that. I'm an
well,
honest man.
Depends on how much money you're going to pay Marucci. To help you out.
Yeah, good call. I have a
Hurling
Stones.
Hurling Stones is our winner. We'll give him a call, and it's S. Holmes at 810WHB.com. Interesting. Okay, very good.
I do have a rookie edition Bolton jersey.
Oh, really?
54.
Oh, that's pretty bad. I like that one.
I call it rookie edition. I like that. I mean,
that's pretty legit.
You're gonna look back like who? It's like when Jordan was 45 for a little bit, and you're like, what? Jordan was 45.
Yeah, I got to get. I mean, I've got my Nick Bolton. So I've got like 5 jerseys that are in the package that I haven't framed yet. I got to get with Seren. All right, I gotta go. Just go over to Seren's house and say, man, just drive me to Art and Frame Warehouse, man. Just can you drive me there? All right, because I've got all these jerseys. I have yet to frame the sod from the Super Bowl down in Miami because I've got it. I've got the Damian Williams signed autographed picture.
It. Put it in a pot.
No, that's so stupid.
No, put it in a pot and grow it.
Here's what I'm doing. I've got the Damian Williams picture of him reaching the ball over the pylon. It's autographed. And I've got the grass that is the end zone and the sideline of where the pylon was. As I was leaving the stadium, I picked both those chunks up and put it into my little gift bag.
Huh.
I've got to find a way to frame that. I bet Art and Frame Warehouse will figure that out. Ken Swanson coming up next. podcast from the KCSN team that will always help us out, whether he's defensive or offensive. I'm not sure. Kent, welcome into the show. How are you, sir?
A very merry Draftmas to you,
Yes.
Jason. I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited for draft day. This is going to be so much fun. It's one of the best weekends of the year for me. I can't wait.
I absolutely love it. I love the build-up to it. I love the actual draft. I love the next-day commentary. I'm not a big fan of the draft grades immediately after, but I will still consume them as if it is oxygen for me, even though I'm like, well, let's take this with a grain of salt, but I'm going to read it. I'm going to see what you think about it. So, yes, it does get my attention for sure. And all of the mock drafts that have been going on and leading up to tonight, and we'll see how the whole thing goes. How are you feeling heading into the draft tonight? Just a general sort of optimism, confidence, excitement about the Chiefs at number 31 currently.
Fascination more than anything, because I don't know if I'm excited. You know, I think there's a path that I want the Chiefs to go. I think it's a path that they would go. I just don't know if that path's even going to be an opportunity for them, right? I think, you know, I'm paying attention to the tackle class, the offensive tackles. There's a couple names I think would make a lot of sense for the Chiefs. But I don't know if they're even going to have the luxury or opportunity to acquire them at 31, or they may not even have the luxury to trade up for them. So I think it's a fascination, a little bit of concern, because I do see a path to, you know, drafting a tackle that I'd like to see, you know, manifest itself here in, you know, 9-10 hours. But I'm just, you know, there's some caution I'm having a little bit with it too. And if it's not that, then man, I think this could go a variety of different ways.
You are one of the madmen out there, not Don Draper, but you're a madman because you did a 7-round mock draft. You psycho. So your 7-round mock draft, and you went a lineman from Ohio State, which most people think can go. That lineman from it's JT Tuimoloau. I nailed it, right? Tuimoloau. Tuimoloau. Let's call him JT for now. Can we call him JT like he's Timberlake?
Yeah.
All right, he's going to bring that sexy edge back to the Chiefs maybe if he's drafted. Why'd you go this route, and did you go this route because Simmons won't be there at 31, or even if Simmons is there, you think the Chiefs go edge, or this is what you would like the Chiefs to do?
Yeah, so my final mock draft, you know, I wanted, you know, and I think, you know, as I was writing it, the optimism surrounding, you know, the Chiefs being able to even secure one of the top tackles just kind of seemed far-fetched. And the door's open a little bit more for me at tackle here. But I kind of operated under the assumption that there wasn't a tackle available to them, and those two tackles being Josh Simmons out of Ohio State and Josh Connerly out of Oregon, I think are the two players that make the most sense based on, you know, Chiefs preferences, based on availability. So I think those are the two that have the best chance. So I decided to just kind of go off the beaten path a little bit to try to, you know, maybe instead of having the conversation about who might fall to the Kansas City Chiefs at pick 31, I decided to go with a player that maybe doesn't get as much circulation, but I wouldn't be stunned to see drafted if the board fell a certain way for the Chiefs. And JT Tuimoloau is one of the most Spagsy defensive ends, Steve Spagnuolo defensive ends in this entire draft class. And so continuing to invest in the defensive line made some sense to me there. So I went with a guy that's long, dense, plays the run extremely well, has an incredible motor, and is extremely physical. So if that doesn't sound like a Steve Spagnuolo defensive end, I don't know what doesn't.
So I always wonder about, you know, production. I am a huge fan of production from a wide receiver standpoint, that if you played wide receiver in college, you better have produced if you're going to do that in the NFL. You can't be a guy that's like, man, he's got all the traits, but, you know, just didn't show up in the games, you know, finished with like 30 catches and like 400 or 500 yards, you know. Like Ladd McConkey, a little bit different because he was battling some injuries and things like that. Like Ladd McConkey, I was able to overlook because of some of those other traits. But, like, if it's a wide receiver, I need to see that Rashee Rice was putting up big numbers, that Xavier Worthy in that offense and with other first-round wide receivers was putting up big numbers. How do you feel about sort of the edge or defensive side of it, to where we can look at some of the counting statistics of sacks and tackles and TFLs and things like that, and we can also look at the advanced analytics of the pass rush win rate and things like that. And JT Tua Moloau, he nailed it again. Essentially average from that standpoint, but he has the traits. And if there's some things that, hey, you get him in with the Kansas City Chiefs and you get their defensive coaches and defensive line coaches, and you can clean up some of those issues, and then you would have a guy that could be a true pass rush winner in the NFL and be a guy that's stout enough to stop the run as well. Like, I love production from a wide receiver. I need to see that before I will come close to drafting that guy. Do you feel the same way about players on the defensive line? If the counting stats or the pass rush win rate isn't there to match up what the athletic profile says it should?
Yeah, I think there's some validity to it. I do think that, part of the reason that JT Tuimoloau is considered, maybe the ceiling for him or the highest he'll be able to be selected or highest he will be selected is somewhere around this pick, right? I think, he's going to hear his name most likely called in the top 50, I would imagine, and probably earlier than 50. He's probably somewhere in that, 30s, I think 30s, low 40s range. But the reason he's there is probably because maybe he doesn't have the same kind of pass rush production as some of those other guys. If a guy with his frame had more production, he's probably going top 20. It's just really hard where the Chiefs pick to get major impact players when it comes, on either side of the ball in the trenches in the 30s, which I think, we're all learning here as the Chiefs continue to cycle through tackle options on the offensive side of the ball over the last few years. It's just really hard to get the impact players because they all go earlier than where the Chiefs are picking in round one. But, JT Tuimoloau, if you're able to get a George Karlaftis level, career arc, that's a slam dunk pick at the end of round one. Just getting another George Karlaftis. And I think he plays the game similarly to like a George Karlaftis, where great effort, he's going to finish plays, he's going to play with power, he's going to give you outstanding effort, snap to snap. And so, you're going to get some production out of it, but you're probably not getting those high-end pass rush traits that are, what are so coveted in the top 20. So, I agree with you. I think it's just also, at some point, it's very tricky to invest in the trenches when you're picking in the 30s, and you have to look at players that maybe just fit your scheme better and can give you high-effort plays and high-effort sacks like JT Tuimoloau.
And I will say, I guess, and I agree with a lot of things that you're saying there. For point of clarification, from my standpoint, it was more of a, the advanced analytics say he's kind of average in the pass rush win rate, or the counting stats say, hey, he had 13 sacks this year. He had 22 tackles for loss. That's 8 more than Karlaftis had. His junior year in terms of sacks, and 10 more tackles for loss, and 20 more tackles. And so the counting stats were there, but in today's day and age, Kent, we have a lot more information that people, go by. Even with the Royals, it's oh, John Rave looks pretty good. Why isn't he up with the Royals? And, you hear some people are like, yeah, the exit velocity is not there. The Royals are looking at the bat-to-ball profile, and it's just not there. That it might work in AAA, but they don't believe that it's going to happen in the big leagues. And so maybe in years past, you'd go look at his on-base percentage and look what his batting average is. He's got to come up to the big leagues, and they're going, yeah, he's hitting the ball, 90 miles an hour off the bat. And in the big leagues, that's going to be a ground ball that an infielder goes and gets to. So from that standpoint, JT Tuimoloau, he's got some of the counting stats, but there are some questions about, hey, why was the pass rush win rate not as good with the athletic profile? But, it's not for like Shamar Stewart. This guy is a 10 in the RAS. But the counting stats, what's going on with that for a guy like him? It's almost it's not the exact opposite, but it's that sort of debate of what would you rather have, a guy that has some of the greatest athletic traits and profile, size, speed combination that had a sack and a half, or a guy that maybe is lesser than, but has 12 and a half sacks at Ohio State.
And I think those counting stats are a lot of effort based, right? Like, I think, it's some of the counting side, like, it's not necessarily a bunch of quick wins for him, right? Like, it is some slow burn kind of plays where he's, just continuing with his outstanding motor to make those plays. And you give him, some of those sacks and some of the counting stats, like you said, are as a result of, just being able to continue to play. And like, you bring Shamar Stewart up, I'd pick Shamar Stewart over JT Tuimoloau 10 out of 10 times, just because you're right. The counting stats weren't there, but the physical profile of Shamar Stewart is, and here's another thing, Jason, we haven't talked about yet. The physical profile, the athletic testing for defensive linemen is very predictive, more than anything else at the edge position. Athletic testing is highly predictive of success at the next level. So if you have top-end athletic traits as a pass rusher, your hit rate is significantly higher than somebody that doesn't have the same physical traits. Now, JT Tuimoloau has pretty good athletic traits. Don't get me wrong. Shamar Stewart's physical comp is Myles Garrett.
Yeah, I was going to say it's Myles Garrett.
So pretty good company for Shamar Stewart. Even though the production's not there, and you said like some of the underlying metrics like Shamar Stewart better anyway, but also the physical profile of a Shamar Stewart likens him to Myles Garrett, and that is very tempting if you're the Chiefs, or most likely if you're a team well before the Chiefs.
Yeah, visiting with Kent Swanson, KCSN, the KC Laboratory podcast. And so while you go edge with pick 31, you end up going wide receiver in the second round. You've got running back and defensive tackle coming in. And by the way, I like C.J. West from Indiana. I think if they can get a guy like him in the third round, sign me up all day for that one. So I think that would be a nice tandem with Chris Jones, and making up for a Turk Wharton being gone and signing that big contract. I think C.J. West is an underrated player in this draft. I would love if we're talking about on Monday, Kent, and pick number 95, C.J. West from Indiana as a Chief. I'm pretty ecstatic about that. I've got a lot of hope in what he can be. But wide receiver, running back, defensive line, you go cornerback as well. There's even a tight end in there. What are you thinking the Chiefs will put an emphasis on to get accomplished tonight? I mean, best player available always is like, oh, you go best player available, but it's always a combination of that sliding scale of best player available and also need. Because if the best player on their board at 31 is Tyler Shuck, they ain't taking him, okay? We're just going best player available. We're following our board. Yeah, but you don't need a quarterback there. So you grade everybody, but doesn't mean you have to draft everybody. Oh, this center at number 31 is our best player available. You ain't taking him. So what do you think they will look to get accomplished tonight in attacking certain positional groups?
I really hope
this
Tyler
weekend,
Shuck
I should say,
is
not
the
tonight.
best player available on their board too, by the way.
Well, I would question at 31 if that's what they're doing. I just brought up a random name, quarterback, But this not tonight, obviously, but this weekend. What do you think they're looking to get accomplished besides obviously drafting Tyler Shuck?
Of course, he's a prime candidate there at the end of round one. Honestly, it seems very open-ended to me. And I think it kind of just depends on how they approach tonight. Because, I'm very fascinated to see what happens if the Chiefs aren't able to get a tackle, an offensive tackle. I think that is the path that they want to take. And Daniel Jeremiah this week, actually in the last 24 hours, has made the comment that the Chiefs are going BTA, best tackle available, at the end of round one. So even narrowing it down to, they're wanting to address the offensive line. They're wanting to address the tackle position. So, if they are able to accomplish that, I think the course sets a little bit differently. If they aren't able to address, tackle, I could see them moving back and acquiring more picks. I could see them, changing really the course of how they approach this entire thing, right? Because I feel like it's all or nothing at tackle. I feel like it's like you either get one in the first round or you draft Esta Pohl out of Washington State in the 7th round, and you don't just go the second round offensive tackle approach again. But I think both trenches get addressed at some point in the top 100. I think I could see them. Like I said, I could see them taking wide receiver early just so that they get their X type receiver that they really don't have in the room right now. And I do think I think running back in the third round or later is probably something that we see as well. I mocked Damian Martinez to them after a small trade at pick 82. Which I think is about the range for him. And the Chiefs have been very connected to him over the draft process. I think that's something that you could see them starting to address somewhere round 3 or later.
Yeah, I definitely think there will be a running back in this draft that will end up with the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll just find out which running back it is. There's a name that's coming up the last couple of days and in some mock drafts as well. And it showed up on your guys' first-round predictions and the staffers that Tyler Brown put together, a name that's come up a few times. And then also Blair Kirkhoff at the Kansas City Star in mocking Luther Burden to the Kansas City Chiefs at pick number 31. What do you think of Luther Burden, and any particular reason why entering the season last year he was viewed as wide receiver 1 and like minus 20,000 to be a first-round pick if you'd have placed the money on it then, to now today he's plus 300 to go in the first round. And according to Vegas, he's going to be there available at number 31 because they think the odds are that he won't even be taken in the first round. What are you seeing in Luther Burden as to why there's some doubts about him? And if he's there at 31 and the Chiefs take him, where would you be on the scale of liking, disliking, being whelmed, overwhelmed, et cetera, on the Missouri wide receiver to the Chiefs?
Well, and yeah, there's been a little Luther Burden buzz the last, week or so.
Yeah.
It was like, I think there's some questions that we can get into in a second that might keep him from being a Chief, but it does seem like there is a little bit more of a connection there recently. Burden, the reason that he hasn't maybe got the same kind of buzz that he had heading into this season is I just don't know how much he's really developed over the last 12 months as a receiver. And there's some questions about, and there's some questions about, the quarterback that was getting in the ball. I love Brady Cook. He was one of the best interviews that we had in the history of KC Sports Network out at the East-West Shrine Bowl, and I'm just a huge fan of the kid. But the quarterback play was pretty up and down for Burden, trying to get him the ball. Missouri countered that by a lot of, manufactured touches, just trying to get the ball into his hands on simple completions. But that kind of did stunt his growth a little bit. In the last couple days, you've seen Missouri release some footage of Luther Burden playing as a outside on the line of scrimmage wide receiver. Even some of those routes aren't necessarily what you would consider a traditional X route tree, right? So a lot of teams are viewing Luther Burden as a more slot-only player that might need some help getting some manufactured touches to get the ball in his hands. The talent is tremendous. And there's plenty of things I can point to on tape to say this guy is one of the, 30, 40 best players in this class still, even though there are plenty of questions about just like the development, the advancement of him as a complete receiver. I think if he played on the outside a little bit more, if he was able to show a more dynamic route tree outside the numbers, I think those things would answer some of the questions that people have. But Missouri doesn't, and to be fair to Missouri, it's not like they are beholden to, necessarily catering to his draft stock. They want to win football games. And for them, the best way to win football games is get the ball in the hands of one of the best playmakers in the entire country. And the easiest way for them to do that was, primarily slot receiver reps, manufactured touches. So, I'm not blaming Missouri for any of that, but that is the big question that I think that exists for Burden. And so how does he fit with the Chiefs? I think it gets a little bit tricky because you have a lot of guys that like to live in the slot right now. And so having a balance there, trying to find a balance of Burden, Worthy, Rice, Hollywood Brown, you kind of got some challenges there as you're trying to move all those pieces and parts around. And I think that's where things get a little bit tricky, is creating more of a log jam and some redundancy in skill set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I think wide receiver is more of a need than maybe nationally people are looking at it for the Chiefs. And and I, they've got what, 2 receivers under contract for next year, and that's Rashee Rice that will be going into the final year of his contract, and Xavier Worthy. So that means the start of 2027, they got one receiver under contract, and that's Xavier Worthy. Who knows how many games Rashee Rice is going to play next year, recovering from the ACL. Luckily, it was early, the suspension, and we saw how good the Chiefs were when they just simply threw it to Rashee Rice and let him do his thing. And Luther Burden is such a stud after the catch, and his contact balance is elite. And if you've got a guy like Worthy that can take the top off the defense, and two guys like Rashee Rice and Luther Burden maybe on either side of the offensive line that you can quick throws or fake quick throws or get the ball in their hands and just create, well, he plays slot. Well, so does Travis Kelce, and Kelce may be in the final year of his career too. So I would not hate it, because I think you're putting guys around him, around Mahomes, that, hey, the offensive line is struggling. Okay, then throw it quickly to Luther Burden or Rashee Rice. Hey, the offensive line is holding up. Awesome. Now go do those more developed routes where Xavier Worthy can beat you over the top. I would certainly be in favor of that. Kent Swanson, KC Sports Network, KC Laboratory Podcast. A couple just quick ones, because we got to let you go. But Jalen Moore's signing, does that lead you to think that the Chiefs go and maybe overpay for Jalen Moore because that's their feeling of the tackle market? Or it was truly Brett Veach saying, we approach free agency as if there's no draft, and so, hey, we can't go draft a tackle. That means free agency. We have to have somebody to go and play tomorrow. Jalen Moore will be that guy that slides into that spot. Is there one side or another that you're leaning to, then maybe that Jalen Moore signing is an indication from the Chiefs that, well, this tackle class sucks?
Well, I think that was some of the buzz early, that maybe they just didn't like the tackle class, but it also could have just been to try to feign the interest that they actually had. I think the Chiefs were aggressively trying to set a floor at the tackle position because they don't want what happened last year to happen again. And so just making sure you have capable bodies that can play the left tackle spot, that have, NFL tape to them, just to make sure that you have it. Now, that doesn't preclude them from taking a tackle in the first round, I don't think, if the right one falls. And Simmons, or Connerly could be available to them. If you solve the tackle problem, not just for 2025, but for beyond, with a Jalen Moore contract and a first-round pick in 2025, it's worth it. It's 100% worth it. Throwing assets at this, it's a worthy investment. If they double dip here and have Jalen Moore available, but also have a ceiling and a potential longer-term answer at tackle. So I think they're being very intentional about making sure that they don't have a tackle problem for the foreseeable future, because I think they're sick of having to go through this process year over year.
All right, last two for you very quickly. Not who, but where. Before, at, or after pick 31 for the Chiefs in their first selection in the draft?
Before. Brett Veach is moving up.
All right. And then last but not least, prediction, Kent Swanson, what happens tonight? So you think the Chiefs are moving up. Who are they taking?
They're moving up for Josh Simmons, offensive tackle, The Ohio State University, a guy that can play both tackle spots, a guy that could be the long-term solution because the tape is top 15 talent in this class, and the ability to get this guy potentially at a discount would be a significant win for this organization for the foreseeable future.
We'll see what happens. Kent Swanson, KCSN, KC Laboratory Podcast. I know this. I will have the draft guide open in front of me while the draft is going on tonight. Great stuff from KCSN, the KC Laboratory Podcast folks, covering the Chiefs and the draft. Kent, you're the man. Appreciate it. Enjoy Christmas today and the next couple of days, and we'll catch up down the road, brother.
May all of your draft dreams come true, Jason.
Yes, visions of sugar plums and prospects dancing in our heads all last night. Kent Swanson, he is the absolute man. KC Laboratory Podcast, KCSN. You can go and check that out. They do have their combination, or putting together the roundtable, I guess is what they called it. Tyler Brown putting together a roundtable of the first-round draft predictions from the staffers there at KCSN. We will take a timeout. We'll come back. We continue hanging out at Hollywood Casino today. Nick Bolton, a fantastic draft pick, despite all of the haters at the time. But we've got a Nick Bolton autographed Chiefs jersey that we'll be doing the drawing for at 5 o'clock today. We'll be here till 2 o'clock. Sports Radio 810 presence here until 5 o'clock. And the draft going on tonight. You can get down here, enjoy it, hang out, check out some of the lines that are on some of these draft prospects, who's going number 1, who's going top 5, pick the top 3 in order. Luther Burden, first rounder or not, he's plus 300. Chiefs heavy favorites to select offensive line in the draft tonight. Defensive line, you can get some plus odds or defensive players there. So some different ways to have some fun watching the draft tonight. We're hanging out at Hollywood Casino. We continue with more Zone next. All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 at WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels. We are hanging out at Hollywood Casino. It is draft day, baby. Thank you to Kent Swanson. We will talk with Daniel Holmes coming up at noon. Looking forward to that conversation, and we'll talk with Evan Kraft at about 12:30 or so. Get his thoughts on some of the injuries with some of the prospects that are there 13 or a decade, 13, but a decade or so with the Kansas City Chiefs as an assistant athletic trainer. In fact, in the documentary or the series Quarterback on Netflix, you know, in the final episode when they are in the training room with Patrick Mahomes and Julie is working on that leg and doing the cupping and everything, and on that foot, I should say, the ankle, the high ankle sprain. We're doing that. In the background, there's Evan Kraft, doing some of that. So, yeah, the star, as we probably say, star of the Quarterback series.
Also starring, you know, like when they do the intros, and it's like also, you know, Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, Marcus Mariota, also
guest starring
Evan Kraft.
Yeah, Julie, Evan Kraft, David Glove, like all, you know, Rick, all of them. Yeah,
like
guest starring there. They were they were big. Bobby Strope, they were big parts of that final episode.
Stars in my eyes.
100%. They got that guy ready to go and play in the AFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. You kidding me? 913-912-4810 is the text line to join us to be a part of the show. 913-912-4810 to join us. Let's talk about we talked in the first hour of players that we thought weren't going to live up to the hype or expectations, or just going to underperform maybe what people thought. We had some disagreement in our picks because my main pick was Ashton Genty, and Sterling thinks Ashton Genty is either Walter Payton or at the floor LaDainian Tomlinson. I think that's what you said. Floor, the worst thing. If Ashton Genty is a bust, it's because he's only LaDainian Tomlinson. Is that what you said?
I do think his upside and his comp actually is LT, by the way. I don't think he's going to be quite that good, but maybe 90 or 95% of LT. I do think LT is a good comp for Ashton.
All right. So we disagreed on that. And then Sterling also said the worst player in the draft is Travis Hunter. Is that what you said?
Stop with the hyperbolic talking points that people might believe.
No. I said
he's going to be really good. I don't think he's going to be historic. I don't think he's going to be this ridiculous player like he was in college, because you're not going to be able to play the amount of snaps that make the whole two-sided guy. He plays offense and defense. Nice in college. In the NFL, it's not Shohei Ohtani in baseball. It's just it's different. So I think he'll be really good. I don't think he's going to be historic.
You and Dylan both had Cam Ward. Dylan also had Kelvin Banks from Texas as a tackle, and then I had Jalen Walker from Georgia, just because it screams Isaiah Simmons to me. A guy that was taken in the top 10. It was just like, man, he could do everything. He's a jack of all trades, master of none, but just figure out a way to use him. Only he doesn't have sort of the size of Isaiah Simmons. Like, he's smaller, doesn't have the crazy bend. Isn't like Abdul Carter has the greatest burst we've ever seen from a defensive end and an edge. He's so fast. He's Micah Parsons. He's all these different things. Abdul Carter. We don't hear that with Jalen Walker. We just hear like, man, you can do so many different things, man. He's such a Swiss Army knife, and I don't know, it just scares me with that, with Jalen Walker. That being said, if he's there at 31, I'll take Jalen Walker on the cheap. I'm just talking about top 10, top 15 if he goes there. Let's get into players we think might outperform the draft view and what people think of these particular players. I got one. So I only came up with one on the outperforming. I was looking around, and I think Luther Burden is one, because especially if he's not going in the first round, I think people are going to be wishing they would have selected him earlier. I have my questions about Golden, where he was before he ran the 40 time, as opposed to where he is now. So I'm not going to use that one because we've talked about Luther Burden.
Well, okay, because that was going to be one of mine. But
so
no,
you can use it. No, you can use it. It's fine. Go ahead. Since we mentioned it, go ahead. You lead us off with Luther Burden.
Okay,
I'm probably in agreement, but let's do it.
Yeah, because he's falling so far, and I think the talent is undeniable. I think he's got a really high floor for a wide receiver. Like I don't understand the falling nature of Luther, because I do think the floor is high on Luther, with the upside being really, really good. I don't think the upside's maybe, Chet McMillan or one of the elite guys in the NFL, but I think you're getting a guy who's, as a rookie, is going to go for 800-900 yards. I think maybe the most yards he'll ever have in his season is 11 to 1,200, but I think you're going to consistently see a guy around 1,000. I think the yak ability of Luther Burden is so great. I think he can play inside and out. X, slot, doesn't matter. I do think Luther Burden has such a high floor. I don't get why he's falling. And I think whoever drafts him, whether it is late first round, maybe it's the Chiefs at 31, maybe it's early second, they're getting a steal and probably the second or third best wide receiver in this draft class.
I would guess that, look, San Francisco's picking 11th. They ain't going to take him there. If he's there at 43 for San Francisco, I'd be floored. I'd be shocked, and I would also lose money because I had Luther Burden of him going in the first round. But I think Luther Burden would be created in a lab by Kyle Shanahan as a Shanahan wide receiver.
Yeah.
Now, if they're sitting at 11 and somebody wants to come up from like the 20s to take somebody, then that may be where they slide back and then take Luther Burden or something like that. They did trade Debo, right?
Yeah.
They are, looking for, I mean, if you're going to sign Brock Purdy to that deal, you better not, have all of his weapons on different teams now. So I think he's that type of receiver, but I'm with you on Luther Burden. The guy that I went with, and it's mainly because the production wasn't there. And, talking with Kent Swanson, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up his mock draft, because he's got JT man, they can't take him tonight. I know.
Yeah, I know. That'd be
Kingsley.
JTT, baby.
Yeah, JTT.
JTT.
Kingsley, easy. Suamataia. Nailed it. That was easy. But JT squared, I don't know. Tuamaluau. Anyway, he's got him at 31 in his mock draft. Now, he also said his mock draft was based on who he thought would be there, regardless of like, hey, there's a run here, there's a run there. Not knowing about the tackles or defensive tackles, he thinks JTT will be there, so he takes him because an edge. And one of the things that we talked about was athletic traits and profiles, pass rush win rate, and then production, the counting stats. Because JTT, the analytics of the pass rush win rate, not there for a first-rounder. Shamar Stewart, the athletic profile is Myles Garrett without anywhere near the production. Now, some of that is also, hey, he played at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Myles Garrett, Texas A&M. The size, the speed to power, just that rare combination of arms and teeth and fingernails, everything that you would want.
What the Jerry Jones are you talking about now?
So my outperforming is going to be Shamar Stewart. And I would love for him to be there at 31, but I think he's going to outperform because I think there are some questions and worries about his production if he gets into a system that the coaches can fine-tune some of the athletic traits that he has. What you would be scared off by is that JTT had 12.5 sacks this year. Shamar Stewart had 1.5.
Yeah.
Karlaftis had 5. Okay, so it wasn't like Karlaftis was, a 20-sack guy at Purdue. Tackles for loss. Karlaftis had 12. JTT had 22 this year. Shamar Stewart had 6. Overall tackles, Karlaftis had 41. JTT had 61. Shamar Stewart had 31. So you are banking on the athletic traits transitioning to the NFL and being an athletic freak that you would build a defensive end edge rusher in a lab to be Shamar Stewart. Now hone in on what you can get from him. So I'm going with Shamar Stewart, and that may blow up right in my face because the production wasn't there. I need production from wide receivers. I better have wide receivers that have yards and catches and touchdowns if I'm drafting them in the first round, because if you can't produce in college, sorry, you can't produce in the NFL. And that might be a knock on Luther Burden, but look what Luther Burden did his freshman and sophomore year.
Yeah.
Okay, so junior year, might have been a little different. They might have been dealing with some issues offensively.
Check tape.
I don't think he forgot how to play wide receiver from sophomore to junior year. I think a lot of it might have been usage. So I'm going Shamar Stewart. Dylan, who you got as to somebody in the first round that may slide and you think is better than what people are talking about?
So I don't know if people have really been like downplaying this receiver, but I just think he gets lost in the shuffle with Jeremiah Smith being on the team and having such an outstanding year. I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka. I think he is going to have a Terry McLaurin-like career in the NFL, and I think that he led the team in receptions with 81, and that's with Jeremiah Smith on the team. Also had 1,000 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns still. So I think he is going to be a star in the NFL, and that's not – it's kind of a reach because no one's talking about him, but to say Ohio State first-round receiver is going to do well in the NFL is not much of a reach. But I'm saying this because everyone is enamored with Jeremiah Smith and the kid out of Arizona now, and I think he's kind of getting forgotten in the shuffle.
The performance of JSN last year,
And that, yeah.
I think has gone a long way for what Emeka Egbuka can be because it feels like he's a JSN clone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also wonder, too, guys, that even with JSN coming out, and maybe this will be the same conversation that we'll have about you mentioned a wide receiver there, Ohio State, this year, that Walter Smith on the team, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this will be the case with Emeka Egbuka. Maybe it'll be the case with him, with Walter Smith, because we've been talking about Egbuka since his freshman year, saying, look at all these wide receivers from Ohio State. You know who the best one is? It's this Emeka Egbuka guy.
Yeah.
So there might be a little fatigue of like, yeah, we kind of know that. He's there. We've got that. And if JSN had a sophomore season like he had his first year, so his first year he had 63 catches, 600 yards, and 4 touchdowns, then there might be some concern about, well, what do you think of Egbuka if he's a JSN clone? Well, last year he had 100 receptions, 1,130 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
And the Seahawks have said, see you to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
Right,
Yeah.
because they feel like they've got their guy in Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I think that's an interesting one. I think that's a really, really interesting pick. Maybe there's some draft fatigue. Maybe there's some love of somebody else on Ohio State.
Right.
And JSN, when we first saw him, we're like, oh, maybe he's not as good as we thought. Maybe there's a reason the wide receivers slid down the draft board like they did. So I like that one.
Also a team captain.
So we have a couple wide receivers.
Yeah. So he's a team captain, which I love. I think that, and the Chiefs like that as well. So I think that does mean a lot.
Which is one of the questions around Luther Burden.
Right. Not
that he's not a team captain, but it's are there some issues about work, body language?
Correct.
But when everyone says that, you're basically saying one game. You're basically saying the Texas A&M game, which I don't blame the guy. That Mizzou was playing horrendously. He finally gets open, scores an 80-yard touchdown, and then it was like an offensive lineman just illegally downfield. It was just the most absurdities perpetually happening. It was on my wedding day, of course, so thanks, guys. Thanks, Mizzou.
Well, that's what you get for having a fall wedding, dumbass.
It was fun. We all watched it together.
SEC. I'm in the SEC. We're all SEC. Let's have a fall wedding. Yeah, name another SEC.
I was going to say, they might revoke.
It was great to watch together.
Missouri
it just meant
SEC
more.
If they knew that.
It just meant more watching the game with the fellas before the wedding. It meant more.
You know why my wedding is in the fall? Because my wedding means more. If
Yes.
you're having it in the summer, my wedding just means more then, apparently, than yours.
It's SEC baseball season, so yes, it still does.
It's cornhole
Damn
season.
Right. Anyway, go ahead.
So, I don't know where I was going. Oh,
you were
yeah,
talking about Texas A&M. You were talking
Burden.
about your wedding for some reason.
Yeah, Luther Burden. Point remains, that's pretty much the game that everyone goes back to when they talk about, Luther's bad body language, which every single player had it. I get it.
Right.
It's not a great look for Luther, but I just feel like you're using one sample size or one small tidbit to try and paint a picture when you're sitting here going, look at the other track record. I just personally, I just don't understand this.
And it's draft season, so everyone could be painting that one game and making it into a mountain out of a molehill. So
right,
so that he falls to them. Yeah.
But has he done anything off the field? That's my whole point. Like,
there's
dudes go to Georgia, and they'll have all this off the field issue, and it's like, he's a good kid, but he made a mistake. And then Luther Burden has one minor blow up on the sideline, and it's, well, is he a character concern issue? It's like, what are we doing here?
Well, I think one, smokescreen, draft season, lying season, all of those things as we lead into the draft. So it could be nobody's going to touch this guy in the first round. Please fall to 25. Please fall to 26. I wouldn't touch this
The
guy.
Steelers are one of those teams. I guarantee you. If he's early in the second round, the Steelers will be trading up for Luther Burden.
Please fall. Please fall. Please fall. There's also, whispers of outside influences that are there around. Like, who knows? This is tough to believe anything at this point. So, a couple of wide receivers and an edge player for who we think will outperform some of the expectations. We'll take a timeout, come back, continue rolling, wrap up this hour. Daniel Holmes will join us at noon. Evan Kraft, assistant athletic trainer for the Chiefs for over a decade. We'll talk with him coming up in the noon hour. He's got the podcast with Aaron Borgman, the Sports Med Bros, a really, really fun podcast to listen to if you are just obsessed with sports overall and injuries and recovery and things like that. It's pretty cool. So we'll talk with him about some of these prospects and how the Chiefs go about it as well. In looking and analyzing some of the draft prospects. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back hanging out at Hollywood Casino. More Zone next.
going to be an absolute stud, who's somewhat falling down draft boards, is Kenneth Grant. If you've listened to me, if you've heard me at all, I would love if Kenneth Grant fell to 31. Him, Luther Burden, those guys have been falling, and I don't understand why. Kenneth Grant is an absolute game changer at defensive tackle. You put him right next to Chris Jones, that D-line is going to be stout, not just good against the run, but a guy, Kenneth Grant, can also get after the quarterback. Have him learn alongside Chris Jones. Again, defensive tackle from Michigan. Right now projected to go 26th, but hopefully he can fall to 31. Daniel Holmes of RGR Football coming up next, talking draft right here on The Zone. Sports Radio 810 WHB.
show. 810 will be here until at least 5 o'clock because coming up at 5 o'clock, we will be doing the drawing for this Nick Bolton autographed Chiefs jersey. Come on over to Hollywood Casino, register, and at 5 o'clock, we will do the drawing. Somebody that is here today will be getting that Nick Bolton jersey. Do not have to be present to win, but you do have to be present here to fill out your information to register for that. But a number of other cool things that are going on with the Penn Play members and the cash and the Sporting KC and KC Monarchs home games that you can use your game day ticket to get that $10 in Penn Play cash and all of that stuff. So pretty cool there. We will be talking draft as we are hanging out on this Thursday. Daniel Holmes, RGR, and the Draft Network joining us here in the zone. Daniel, welcome in, brother. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. How are you guys doing?
We are doing great, dude. It's here. Finally, the draft day. You refreshed and ready after a little vacation, after all the scouting, and now just maybe sitting back and enjoying it a little bit?
That's exactly how I feel. 5 days in Vegas, celebrating my birthday, my wife's birthday, and our 10-year anniversary.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. It was just a great way to kind of close out my grinding and then getting to go cover the draft this week. And the weekend is going to be as fun as always. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
How do you watch the draft now that you've been putting in all of these hours and scouting players and watching them and having these different write-ups on them? How do you then watch the draft and take in these players going in different spots?
Well, since I joined RGR Football, we have done a live stream every single year. So I watch the draft and cover it as it happens, and that's for the length of the first round, the length of the first and second rounds, and then on day 3, it's more of just pop in when the Chiefs draft, and then go over some players here and there. But really, it's just trying to make sure that I have my notes ready for any possible situation that could unfold, and that can be more troublesome as you get to more players that you watch and that you've covered. So now that I have like 2 real screens and a third screen with my laptop and my notes, I feel pretty comfortable this year handling it.
Do you find yourself rooting for players that you've covered and scouted and things like that you've done the write-ups on? Do you root for those guys to be taken at certain spots in the first round, or maybe even a guy that you've scouted for the Chiefs to take it because you're like, all right, listen, Ryan, I got this.
Right? That's kind of how it is, right? You can go through all these players. I think I have. I don't even remember. I haven't counted how many scouting reports I have, but I have watched, at least gotten eyes on at least 200 prospects this year. My big board has about 250, I think, on there, which, again, that's whether it's having seen them at the Senior Bowl, in person here or there, having scouted them, having done a video review on them. So I've gotten eyes on a lot of different players this year. So you always, especially in the first round, the ones that you've done like film reviews on or have in-depth scouting reports, you're like, yeah, those are the guys that I want in the first 2 days so that I can just continue to unload my vast wealth of knowledge upon these people.
Nice. I love it. Daniel Holmes, RGR Football, the Draft Network, and he'll have that live coverage of the draft as talking about these picks that are coming off the board. As you look at this draft, look at it overall, and then we'll hone in on the Chiefs a little bit and maybe do that here, sort of a combination. As you look at this draft, the strengths, the depth, the parts of this NFL draft this year, how does it connect with what the Chiefs may be looking to do? A spot that they need that isn't as great from a depth perspective, a need for the Chiefs that is really good from a draft depth perspective. How does this draft shape up through the lens of what the Chiefs are looking for to get accomplished?
I think at least where they're desperate in terms of they don't have anyone on the roster next season or any explosivity at running back, it's a good place to be in. I think there's going to be a number of running backs drafted on day 1 and day 2, and really the strength of this class is from round 2 to round 4. I don't think it's a draft that has a number 1 with a bullet Bijan / Jahmyr Gibbs type of talent. I think that they're a tier down, but I have Amarian Hampton and Ashton Genty in that bucket. Those are the 1 and 2 that I have. And then you have the buckets with Caleb Johnson, Trevion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. I even had Damian Martinez out of Miami in the second round when it came out with my grades this year. So I really like where they're sitting from a running back perspective. I know everyone's going to say we don't want to see them draft the running back in the first round, but if you consider the offensive line, again, I only have 16 first-round grades myself. We've heard Brett Veach talk about 15-ish, around that number where you have, if you don't have a first-round grade available at 31 and you can't get up to go get someone that you really want, that you might have a first-round grade on that's sliding, I mean, I feel like this situation where you could see a running back drafted in the first round, but overall, the depth at running back in that second to fourth round area is really good. I still think it's a good wide receiver class. We know that the Chiefs are always going to want to address wide receiver, as even Brett Veach has talked about adding another explosive player. But offensive tackle it's a tough one. It's a tough one because they are in a position where if somebody does fall because other positions are going, they're in a situation where they can go up and get someone closer to around 20. But the one player that I think we were all kind of honing in on might not necessarily be in that range anymore, but day two, still some really good options at tackle. It's a lot of tackle / interior offensive lineman converts. So they still need offensive line. If they don't think that they're in a position to maybe get one in the first round, I still think there are some good options on day two. Then you flip over to the defensive side, and the defensive line and edge, defensive tackle and edge is a very good draft. My defensive line is a little more thinned out than I expected it to be in terms of guys that I have graded on days 1 and 2, and there's a lot in that fourth round for me. But day 2 for defensive end is just full of players for me on my board, which you guys will be able to have access to on NFL33.com, so you can follow along as the draft is going through. So it's a good position for the Chiefs to be in, which we know they want to draft at least along the offensive line in the trenches on both sides of the football. Corner on day 2 is also very, very well stocked. I think they're in a good position there. So I do believe that the positions that the Chiefs are going to be monitoring pretty closely, and where you have 4 top 100 picks, they're in a position to really address those needs as it unfolds.
Visiting with Daniel Holmes, RGR Football, the Draft Network, and looking at your mock draft that you released this morning, and what stands out to me, Daniel, is the talk about, is Josh Simmons going to be available? Do they take, Josh Simmons if he's there with the injury concerns of that particular and specific injury? But what I see from the mock draft is you've got those 4 tackles going all in the top 11, and San Francisco at number 11 taking Josh Simmons. So, from your perspective, do you get the sense and the feeling that, people talking about Josh Simmons and this tackle class and guys that'll be there, that maybe the league is not viewing it that way, and they're looking at the talent of Josh Simmons, and he won't make it past 15 or 20 to even maybe being in range if the Chiefs feel like, hey, Josh Simmons is our guy, and if he's there in the 20s, we're going to move up and take him. You've got them all going in the top 11.
Yeah, this is only things that I've seen recently about the injury news is good news regarding Josh Simmons' injury. And again, I've said it before. I think Josh Simmons was the best tackle before he got hurt. And obviously, you have 5 game sample size where, in all reality, he didn't face the best competition. Just get that right off the bat. He did not face the best competition when they played Marshall. Marshall didn't actually line up Mike Green across from him very often. They were avoiding Josh Simmons to an extent. So you have some of that to kind of parse through with his tape. But I think that the talent with his athletic ability, with his hand usage, the way that he plays the position, an aggressive mindset, a good backside blocker, run blocker, guys that get to the next level, you can move in space. These teams are going to just kind of, if they have a good, maybe a thumbs up on the medical report saying it looks better than we could have anticipated. And I know that they're really touch and go with the patella injuries, especially for 300-plus pound human beings. Those are not something you really want to mess around with. But again, teams trust their medical teams. We know the Chiefs have done that on their own regard with Trey Smith. He fell to the 6th round. I think everyone can understand that's probably not going to happen for a guy like Josh Simmons, who is a tackle in a tackle room or class where you have, is Will Campbell going to end up playing guard? Is Armand Membo just going to be right tackle? Is he able to play left, play right? I think he can do both, but where will teams have him? And then you have the Kelvin Bankses of the world, where a lot of people also think he's going to reduce inside. Josh Connolly can reduce inside. Marcus Bow out of Purdue can reduce inside. Like, there's a lot of these guys that have question marks. And I know that everyone's like, well, Josh Simmons has 33 in terms. Well, at his pro day, he had 34. Teams are all going to have 34 on their boards for Josh Simmons, period. End of story. So that is where we're at with Josh Simmons. So that's why I have him going as high as he does. And it wouldn't shock me to see him go even higher if those medical reports do come back and they're clean for the most part for Josh Simmons.
Daniel Holmes is our guest. I want to ask it from both perspectives, a guy you love and a guy that scares you in the draft. Prospects that you've looked at and you like and you've scouted, or just guys that are there in the first round. Is there a prospect within range of the Chiefs, not number 5 in the draft, but prospects within range of the Chiefs around it? Realistically, could they move up, things like that? That you let's start with one that you really love, a prospect that might be in the range of the Chiefs that you would love the fit and the connection with Kansas City.
Yeah, it's really tough because we got I'll say it too. This might be the most difficult draft to predict. Right now, everyone holds their own pick. And we don't know if people are going to move. We've only heard people saying teams are trying to move down. Like, it feels like everyone's trying to move down in this draft. But as Brett Veach has stated, not very many teams are interested in moving up into the first round. So it feels like they're going to be sticking and picking or moving up. And I do think even with some of the question marks that surround a guy like Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, sitting him next to Chris Jones not only would be the best incubator to get the pass rush upside out of him, but it would be a good situation to have a guy who's going to come in, and I still think he's learning from a run defensive perspective. In 2024, going from the Jesse Minter defense in 2023 to Wink Martindale's defense in 2024, you have a little bit of, I would say, inconsistencies in his game. I think he was a better run defender in 2023 than he was in 2024. So I like the fit specifically in Kansas City because of what he provides next to Chris Jones, a guy with his size, his movement skills, that if you can continue to develop him from all the athletic ability that is on tape, not necessarily on the testing. I don't think he blew away the testing by any stretch, but you watch him on tape, the athletic abilities, when he's consistent with that first step, when he uses his hands well, he has really long arms, just a big body. It's hard to move when he is anchored in properly. I think that fit makes a lot of sense, and it's a good one for Kansas City on the defense side. And then one that I really like on the offensive side, we're just going to throw caution to the wind and say Omarion Hampton is, again, my RB1 in this class, and I would be perfectly fine with the Chiefs drafting him in the first round, regardless of if they even were to move up a little bit. I know people are going to say sacrificing draft capital to go up and get a running back isn't the best investment. But again, if he's the highest rated player on your board, I'm not going to have too much of a worry about it. If it's up 20, okay, now we have a little bit more of a concern. But if you do see him falling and he's there at 31, I think Hampton fits everything that they want from a physical standpoint. He is a good pass catcher out of the backfield, a physical, willing blitz pickup guy. He still has some technical stuff with his hands to work on in terms of staying connected as a pass protector. But I love his ability to run multiple schemes. We've seen the Chiefs kind of turn from a zone-heavy team, in large part because Pacheco is not necessarily a great zone back. You've seen them incorporate some real power concepts, not duo, which I would love to see them run more of, but that's neither here nor there. You see some single back power, some counter. So I think Hampton provides the versatility that you're looking for. That can run everything. He has the explosive burst to get to the next level. He doesn't have Pacheco's top speed, but he gets to his top speed faster than Pacheco does. And then he's got the ability. He's not like the most elusive guy in the world. He's not a Saquon Barkley in open field, but he has more than enough juice to be able to make guys miss. But he's going to break tackles. He's going to keep going. And then the stop and start for me is where I noticed he has the tools to keep going and get back up to speed when he breaks a tackle or makes the guy miss. It's not just a labored motion. So I would like to see them draft Omarion Hampton at 31, maybe a little bit higher if that's where they go. But those are two guys that I really like to fit for Kansas City specifically at 31 that may be there.
Okay, so I want to get into a player that may scare you if they were to go this route. But you bring up Amari Hampton as your running back one, and that's really interesting to me. We talked in the first hour, Sterling and Dylan and I, we discussed the players that we feel like won't live up to the hype, or a player that will outperform, or a player that we have concerns about with what their expectations are. And the player that I picked was Ashton Genty. That I think he's a good running back. I just don't think he's Walter Payton. I don't think he's this stud plug-and-play Hall of Famer that if you're like, hey, we're sitting here at number 6, let's trade up to number 4. Or we're sitting here at 8, let's trade up to number 5 and get Ashton Genty. That's a lot of draft capital for a running back. And, in fact, you've got him below Amari Hampton. So, what is it about Ashton Genty that maybe you aren't on board with as much as it seems like a large majority of the consensus is that Ashton Genty is a can't-miss running back stud, that you draft him in the top 10 and you're good for the next 4 or 5 years with him on your team?
Well, let's just start with the massive workload he's had over his career. Like, that's the number one thing for me, because when you look at running backs, unless you are Derrick Henry, an actual alien, which, he could be. Again, I hope everyone that I have concerns about proves me wrong. Like, I really do. I hope that that's the case. But unless he is Derrick Henry, there's going to come a point where the carries add up and you start to get injured. And for a guy who wins based almost purely on breaking tackles and creating better angles to make arm tackles, where he's not the most elusive guy in the world. I think his footwork behind the line of scrimmage is relatively slow. And while he has, I would say, decent to good vision, I don't think he has elite vision by any stretch. He also chooses to run in between the tackles and take hits instead of options where he could run the ball, take it outside, or bounce it every now and then, because his build-up speed and his burst isn't necessarily there. So for a guy that, in my opinion, needs more of getting up to speed to start to use his traits and his physical tools, where he's going to break tackles and make arm tackles and be able to not be that bowling ball where he bounces off guys here and there, he has to get past line of scrimmage first. And that, for me, is not where I want to invest a running back position, a guy who is a little bit, I wouldn't say he's like scheme dependent, but I do think he needs a little bit of room to get up to speed to start being what we saw at Boise State. Level of competition, I know that he played decently against Penn State. There's a couple runs he had that were really nice. I'm concerned with the workload. And again, my opinion is that his footwork behind the line of scrimmage is relatively slow. He doesn't have that stop and start ability. Once he stops, he's going to either break tackles and fall, or he's going to just kind of fall forward. And I don't see that the top speed's not there, and again, the burst is to get to the next level isn't necessarily there either. So I think he's going to be a very good NFL player. I have no questions about that. I do think that the wear and tear from his career already is going to have some impact on, and for a guy who running backs want to play longer, right? He willingly takes on the brunt of physical nature in his game to an extent where he's dealing out a lot of hits. And NFL players are going to be like, fine, I steal some hits. Let's take those hits. And I think that as his career goes forward, you might see less and fewer of those start to be broken tackles, instead become actual tackles.
Daniel Holmes is our guest. All right, real quick, a couple of quick ones for you. I mentioned a prospect that you really love. Is there a prospect that may be around the Chiefs' range that would scare you if the Chiefs go that route?
Josh Connolly, Oregon tackle. I'm very scared about that. I think he's a lesser Kingsley Suamataia. I think that Kingsley has more physical traits. I think he's stronger than Josh Connolly, and everyone seems to be projecting him in the first round. And I'm just like, I'm really concerned about his ability to take on power, because he can't. He can't do it. He has no anchor. He gets bullied far too often for my liking, and speed to power, as we've seen specifically for guys and rookies coming into the NFL at defensive end. Speed to power has been like the thing, and that's where you're going to see a lot in the NFL, and it does concern me to an extent. So he's the guy that I'm kind of worried about becoming a Kansas City Chief, and then continuing to see the same things that we've seen in Kansas City over the past 4 years, where it's just a consistent rotating left tackle position.
All right, last one for you. Daniel Holmes, RGR Football, the Draft Network. What's your prediction? Who do you think the Chiefs take tonight?
Yeah, I do think it's going to be Kenneth Grant. I think he's falling down board. Tackle, I do think, like you said in my mock draft, I think that tackles are going to be gone within the first 15 picks, and that's going to weigh heavily on the Chiefs to be able to move up and get somebody they want. I'm not going to rule out cornerback either, but I do think Kenneth Grant is going to be the pick. Falling down a little bit, not necessarily the production you want to see from a guy who's got first-round buzz, but it wouldn't shock me if it was Trey Amos out of Ole Miss either. I think he's a very good fit for Kansas City, but I do think that Kenneth Grant's the pick.
All right, we'll see what happens. Daniel, you're the man. Appreciate it, brother. Loved all the breakdowns, watching you throughout this scouting process and the draft season. And enjoy tonight, and we'll be checking it out and watching as well, and all the coverage and everything like that. You're the man. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you very much for having me. I always love being here.
Absolutely. Daniel Holmes, great stuff, man. If you want to go check him out, In Harm's Way on Twitter, really good stuff from him and the breakdown. The player that would scare him is Josh Connerly. Daniel Harm's scout on Josh Connerly is a lesser Kingsley Suamataia. Not great, Bob. But a player that he really loves and thinks may be there in his prediction to draft is Kenneth Grant tonight, defensive tackle, which makes Sterling pretty excited because he's a Kenneth Grant fan. So we'll see. Whatever. He also said he'd like to see him take Amari in Hampton. So there you go, Sterling. Now you're yelling. Now you're screaming and yelling. You don't have to yell like it's the yelling, Sterling. That's bothersome.
Okay. When you were gone for that last minute segment, what did I do?
I don't know.
I talked about Kenneth Grant.
Good for you.
That was my minute long.
So
I go, Jason can't stop me, so I'm going to do my Kenneth Grant propaganda. So the fact that Harm said that really, he's also part of the propaganda team. We're getting paid by Kenneth Grant to talk about him like this. It's a propaganda team.
Makes sense. Let's take a timeout. We'll come back. And on the other side, we're going to talk with Evan Kraft and talk some injuries and some questions around some of these players and prospects. Over a decade with the Chiefs as an assistant athletic trainer, part of the Sports Med Bros podcast with Aaron Borgman. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk with Evan Kraft about a Josh Simmons and a Will Johnson, a Deion Walker, guys we talked about in the first hour, and also the fact that the Chiefs brought in Josh Simmons on a top 30 visit. What goes on when it's an injury concern? How much are they playing a role in that? All of these things where it involves and impacts the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Continue rolling. More Zone next. you, Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels. We head up until 2 o'clock. We are hanging out at Hollywood Casino. We're coming up at 5 o'clock. We will do the drawing for the Nick Bolton autographed jersey. Come in here and register, and at 5 o'clock we'll do the drawing there. So got to be here to register. Do not have to be present to win. And also check out all of the really cool stuff that they've got going on. You can play some money on the first round and have some fun that way. You got some baseball games on right now, Twins and White Sox. White Sox up 1-0 on the Twins. So an American League Central breakdown there. All that for you. We're hanging out here at Hollywood Casino. Right now, let's talk about the NFL draft, and maybe from a injury perspective and some things like that. We are joined now by Evan Kraft, part of the Sports Med Bros podcast with Aaron Borgman, and over a decade with the Chiefs as an assistant athletic trainer, joining us here in the zone. Evan, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Jason. How are you? Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, I appreciate you joining us. Do you get, one of the things we talked about earlier in the show, that final episode of the quarterback series on Netflix when it was in the training room with Patrick Mahomes and Julie's working on his ankle. Do you get credits there at the end of the documentary? Do you get residuals for being in that scene? Or do you get a guest starring Evan Kraft on that one?
I don't think so. I don't even remember seeing myself in that scene, to be honest with you. So, no, I do not get any. I don't get any kickbacks from Netflix.
Ridiculous.
Unfortunately, on that one.
Ridiculous. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Visiting with Evan Kraft. Okay, let's talk about a player that has been pretty polarizing around here because of the injury, specifically with Josh Simmons. Who knows where he's going to go tonight? But he's a guy that's considered a top 15 pick talent-wise. If he played all year, he might be a top 10 pick and first tackle off the board. But he suffered the patellar tendon rupture and missed the season. Recovering, and some of the news that's out there, it's all good news and everything, which I'm guessing is probably coming from his agents. Let's start with this. The issue with rupturing a patellar tendon as opposed to an ACL injury or something like that for an offensive lineman.
Yep. So these are actually I've done a few of these rehabs with offensive linemen, and they're a little bit more difficult for big guys. If you think about the location of your patellar tendon, for all those out there listening, if you find it at the bottom of your kneecap, there's that kind of space down there. That's where your patellar tendon is, and it really generates all the torque through your knee. So if you think about it, what an offensive lineman has to do, they have to push all these 300-pound guys out of the way. They have to catch, essentially, those 300-pound defensive linemen. So they have to place a lot of stress and a lot of strain through that knee, and it just takes time. It takes time to heal, and it takes time to get it stronger again, really. And most importantly, it takes time to get it stronger. So I think this guy had surgery in October, I want to say. We discussed this on the most recent podcast episode. So, he may be a guy that you draft, and he's a PUP candidate to start training camp, and you get him rehabbing through camp, and hopefully, those first few weeks of the season, he can be ready to roll.
That injury specifically, and you mentioned that torque and the body and for being a big man, are we starting to see more evidence? Is there? Let me ask you this way, Evan: is there an advance in science to where back in the day ACL was career ender, right? Or you're not recovering from this. Tommy John, you tear a UCL in baseball, you're done. But we see it now, guys. A year later, they're back pitching on the mound, and hey, they look pretty good. ACL is not the same way that it is. I mean, Rashee Rice, it's like, well, thank goodness his ACL happened in week 4 because he might have a regular offseason. Are we getting more advanced in maybe the science behind the patellar tendon, or is this just one of those to where, man, the more advanced you get, it really doesn't matter because of the biomechanics, the kinesiology around that particular specific area? Yeah,
I think you hit it on the head with the latter part. I think it comes down to biomechanics, and it comes down to position specific as well. A kid that's a receiver may not take as long to recover as, say, an offensive lineman, just given the demands of those two different positions, right? So I don't think the science is really, changed in terms of the procedure and how they do it, but the recovery, I mean, certainly you just have to consider what you're wanting the athlete to do in terms of rehab and getting back on the field.
Visiting with Evan Kraft, assistant athletic trainer with the Chiefs for a long time, and now with the Sports Med Bros podcast with Aaron Borgman. Are there factors in a player's recovery or rehab or return to play are there the factors in better or worse that, okay, if this happens, then you know what, there's a better chance of him fully recovery. If this is going on, then maybe not. Is there? I remember Patrick Mahomes when the knee cap was dislocated, and there was talk around, like, because of how delicately it was put back in place, it sort of mitigated some of the risk and injury that might have been there. Is there something along those lines with immediacy or surgery that could impact whether or not there's full recovery, full return to play, or maybe limited ability the rest of his career because of that?
Yeah, usually there's not in the grand scheme of the rehab timeline. When you talk about ACLs, typically in an ACL injury, it's not just an isolated ACL. You have maybe some meniscal tearing, maybe you have an MCL tear as well. So there are multifactorial things that happen, but it doesn't really change the, I guess end goal or end time frame from the beginning to end of the rehab process or the recovery process. So when you talk about Patrick and his kneecap, the reason that his was a little bit quicker than others is because when he dislocated that kneecap, he didn't chip any away the cartilage surface. So that's because it was put back so delicately. So that's why his was not as complicated and didn't take a little bit longer, stuff like that. So hopefully answered your question there.
Yeah. Visiting with Evan Kraft, surgery of the patellar tendon, is there a risk factor in I don't know who did the surgery. I'm guessing a guy who's got as much money on the line as he did at Ohio State, and at Ohio State probably has access to some of the best surgeons in the world. So it's probably not, Jeff right around the corner that was like, yeah, let me do it. Give me 5 minutes. I'll fix this thing for you. But how much is maybe, surgery being a thing that could be a make or break, for lack of a better term, of a guy returning to the level that he was at before he got injured?
Yeah, a good surgery makes a ton of difference, especially in, from a rehab standpoint and a clinician doing that rehab. If you have, for instance, in a patellar tendon rupture, if that surgeon doesn't align that patella, that kneecap correctly, or if that patella sits a little bit higher than it used to before the repair was made, or sits a little lower than used to, then that changes that athlete's ability to generate torque through his knee or extend his knee. So that does make a difference in that process, because then, if that patella or that kneecap is sitting too high, he's not able to really produce that strength through his knee. If it's too tight, he's losing a little bit more range of motion. He's still kind of probably having trouble putting strength through that knee.
This may be a dumb question, and I think a lot of these might be dumb questions from my standpoint of not knowing some of these things. But is there a way to check via MRI if the surgery, if it was too high or too low, or would you have to just go back in there to see, oh, yeah, this is a little bit different than maybe what you would like it to look like?
Yeah, you could use MRI or even X-ray. X-ray could tell you the same thing, just because X-ray you'd be able to see the height of the patella or the kneecap on X-ray to see if they're aligned, comparing them on both sides.
Visiting with Evan Kraft. It's good to know. I again, have no idea if it was one of those, well, we'll just find out if he fully recovers. The surgery was great. Yep. If he doesn't, then, we should have seen that earlier or something like that. Evan Kraft is our guest. The Chiefs brought in Josh Simmons on a top 30 visit, and I'm assuming that top 30 visit is all about the medical and everything. So I'm just curious, are you guys a part of those top 30 visits, Rick or Julie or David or you, in looking at the athlete and write-ups on the athlete, MRIs, giving the thumbs up, the thumbs down, signing off on, this guy's medicals are good. If a guy comes in specifically for a top 30 visit and it's only about the medicals, how much is involved in something like that?
Yeah, typically if he was a combine player, you've got most of your homework done up to that point. but it doesn't hurt to take a second look. So I'm sure that all of them were involved in that process to a degree, and I'm sure that they got eyes on him a second time and just went through some things with him. So I'm sure everything has been vetted on that young man as much as they can.
I'm also wondering, maybe it was like, you've got all the information heading into the combine, and now from combine to, April 22nd, well, let's see what the recovery process is like. Let's check out range of motion now. Is this recovering at the rate that we would like to see? And if it is, okay, we feel good about, that return to play. Yeah.
No, you're exactly right.
Evan Kraft is our guest. A couple of other players I want to talk to you about before we let you go.
Sure.
The Chiefs are in need of a defensive tackle in this draft, and a guy who at the beginning of last year was viewed as like maybe a potential first-round draft pick because of the size that he plays at defensive tackle out of Kentucky, and Deion Walker. And it's discovered at the combine that the guy was playing with a stress fracture in his back. Now, he said the lack of production as to why he wasn't as good this last year was directly related to that. Not sure if that's an excuse or, hey, I'm fully healthy now, don't worry, the lack of production is only that. A stress fracture in the back of a big man like that, how much of a worry would that present to you if you're working with a team and they're like, hey, let's look at this guy who weighs 340 pounds and was playing with a stress fracture in his back?
Yeah, so back issues and big guys do not go hand in hand. It's a hard thing to manage, whether it's a stress fracture, whether it's a herniated disc, whether it's, arthritis in the low back. It's very difficult to manage because of, going back to what I said earlier, because of the demands of that position, right? So, again, that's a big man. He's carrying a lot of weight. He's got to lean on people. He's got to move offensive linemen out of the way. And your core and your low back are kind of those areas of where all that force gets transferred through. So for a young man like that, I got to imagine they're kind of maybe balking a little bit just because of that issue and, thinking about how are we going to manage this, and maybe he's completely symptom free. But if he said that, that was an issue with his production, then I got to imagine that they're probably going to take a deeper look at that and see, what can we do if we do draft this guy? How are we going to manage this? How are we going to get him through? How are we going to get him to play? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you want, if you're going to draft somebody that high, you want him to play right away. So I got to imagine that they're taking a second look at him and trying to figure out what they want to do with him and how to manage that if they do end up taking him.
Last one for you. Evan Kraft is our guest and a part of the Sports Med Bros podcast, a great podcast. You and Aaron Borgman do a great job. And over a decade with the Chiefs as an assistant athletic trainer, now with Milestone Performance Academy. And you've got those 3 rings with the Chiefs, which is pretty awesome, by the way. Being around athletes, your professional career, I've wondered if are there some players where it might be, just body type, he's just going to be injury prone. I bring up a player specifically, and I'm not saying he's injury prone or anything like that. It's just been unfortunate. Will Johnson, who's still going to be drafted in the top 20, but going into the year was maybe the best defensive player on the board at Michigan, and he suffers a shoulder injury in week 5, misses a game, comes back, then has turf toe and misses the rest of the year. He's then preparing for the combine, and he tears his hamstring and misses the combine and his pro day. So since, late October, he's had a shoulder, a turf toe, and now a hamstring. Is this one of those to where, it's just tough luck for the kid, and he's going to be fine? He played 26 games the previous 2 years. Or is it such a thing as, this guy's just an injury-prone player? Not him specifically, but there are guys that just may be body type. It's not going to hold up in the NFL, and part of your ability is availability.
Yeah, and you got to look at too what are their external factors as well. Not just you see what happens when they're playing the game, but what are they doing on the outside? Are they taking care of their body outside of the game of football or in the training room or in the weight room? What's their training routine? Is that contributing to any of this stuff? And it's hard in the off season, especially when those guys are training for the combine. They're doing everything they can to get ready for combine stuff, not necessarily to play a game of football again. So you do see a lot of that soft tissue stuff when guys are getting ready for the combine just because they're training for these very specific events. With him, he may just be a guy. He plays a tough position that he's just been beat up playing the game, and that's just how it is. Those injuries that he had. I'm not really specifically familiar with them, but I think he'll be fine with all those. Those aren't going to be really long-term things, I would imagine. Again, I don't know the specifics of him, but I think he's a guy that, probably he got unlucky, and that's just what happened. You see that sometimes. You have guys that just have unfortunate events that happen to them while they're playing, and it has nothing to do with body type or anything like that. It's just the nature of the game. There are some, though, that are, they pull their hamstring 2 or 3 times a year, or they strain another muscle 2 or 3 times a year. Then you have to go back and look like, okay, maybe this is something biomechanical, maybe it's something to do with body type. But from the way you were just talking, it sounds like maybe this young man has just had some unfortunate events happen to him.
Yeah. Evan Kraft is our guest. I know I said that was your last one. I lied. One more quick one. I apologize.
Go for it. No worries.
The Chiefs have had so many late runs, and their offseason is shorter than every other team's offseason, especially over these 7 years in the Super Bowls. What kind of a change to the offseason does that do for the trainers in getting these guys ready for the next season? Trent McDuffie talked on Monday that his career, all he knows is playing in Super Bowls, typical. Yeah. But in his career, what he's done is changed from, lifting weights, squatting, some of those things, to now his offseason is more preparing his body for an entire season. What does that do to a team that's played in Super Bowl after Super Bowl and they have 2, 3, 4, 5 more weeks of wear and tear on their body before they start the next year?
Well, most importantly for the athletic training staff, it cuts down on our vacation. So that's kind of the most important thing.
That makes sense. Yes, of course.
No, you have to really focus more on recovery and getting your body back to normal, back to a normal homeostasis before you really start picking it back up again. And that takes time, and unfortunately the time that isn't there when you're playing, the last game of the year, and then if you win, you're playing the first game of the year, so you're going to training camp earlier too. So everything's cut down. So, in the training room especially, we focus more on recovery and mobility and really doing the right stuff so that the guys are recovering the right way, in addition to still training and doing those things in the weight room, doing that stuff on the field in the off season.
Yeah, interesting. Evan Kraft, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. Very informative. I enjoy the podcast, and those that are sports geeks, that all aspects of the game, the injury part of it certainly is an aspect as well. Love the podcast, the Sports Med Bros. Evan, thank you so much for joining us, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
Absolutely. There's Evan Kraft, again, long time with the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the first guys that Rick Burkholder hired when he got with the Kansas City Chiefs, and the man's got himself 3 rings with the Chiefs, and now director of Milestone Performance Academy in North Carolina, but Wichita native as well, so around the area, but with the Chiefs for a long time. The Sports Med Bros, he and Aaron Borgman do a great job, and their latest podcast is about some of these NFL draft prospects. The one before that was about why do we see major league players suffer more soft tissue injuries early in the year? It's like, I would say the interesting part for guys who have spent their life on the NFL side is that there is no real sort of ramping up to like, hey, we're going to spend the first couple of weeks getting used to football. No, by week 1, you got to be ready to play a football game. Like, you've got training camp and OTAs off season to be ready to play a football game. And you play every day, like every game. Yeah. You're not he's going to miss this game or that game just to, rest his body. There's no resting the body. Now baseball's 162, so it's like, let's give the guy a day off. Day game after night game, the guy's not going to catch. You're going to give him the day off there. But thought that was interesting conversation around, like, why early in the year? Are we not seeing enough of the full speed of what you're going to be doing, full speed swings, full speed runs? Why – obliques, hamstrings, quads. Jonathan India had the quad. Maybe that was from running around in the outfield a little bit more than he's used to in his body. I thought that was an interesting podcast that they had a couple of podcasts to go to.
Well, I might be wrong, but it feels like the Chiefs, knock on wood, have been pretty good in the soft tissue injuries for the most part, and I wonder if it's because they do have harder training camps. They have Andy Reid. That's what he's known for. It's not easy. It's not just walkthroughs.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's because it helps prepare these guys to get in game shape earlier on than a lot of other teams.
But it's a good point, though. You're the last game if you play in the Super Bowl, and if you win, you're the first game. And you go to training camp before everybody else. So
less time to get soft.
Yeah, that's right. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back and wrap up this hour. We'll continue rolling along. We're hanging out at Hollywood Casino. It is draft day around the NFL. More Zone coming up next. All right, wrapping up this hour. One more hour to go here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. From the Zone, we are hanging out at Hollywood Casino, and you've got a few more hours to get here to register to win this Nick Bolton jersey. We're going to be giving that away at 5 o'clock. We'll do the drawing for that coming up at 5 o'clock. We'll be here till 2, and Sports Radio 810 continuing to hang out here until 5 o'clock as well. So the draft going on tonight, 7 o'clock is when it gets underway. The Titans have been on the clock for a while.
Can't wait for them to use the full 10 minutes.
I mean, I think they are required to, before they announce the pick, of like 8 or 9 minutes. Like they're not. They know who they're taking, but Raj ain't going to come out with 3 minutes.
It's my pet
gone.
peeve, Raj.
Got to enjoy it, man. Just enjoy it, Sterling. Hanging out here at Hollywood Casino. One more hour to go here in the zone. It is draft day going on. We've got it for you right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Coming up tonight, it'll be Soren Petro, and it'll be Curtis Siebold and Mark Borichter. They've got you covered with all of the picks and the analysis and the breakdown coming up tonight right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB, presented by Crossroads Investment Lending, Zero Res, Hollywood Casino, CBD American Shaman, Choice Solutions, and the Bob Sight Auto Group. And then tomorrow night, it'll be Jack Johnson running things in the studio with Todd Lebo out at Arrowhead tonight and tomorrow. Todd is going to be very upset if my preference comes to fruition of the Chiefs trading back and Todd wasting his entire night there at Arrowhead. It wouldn't be a waste. He gets to hang out with friends.
Todd is so bad for him.
No. Todd is friends with all the people. That is a group of people. You know what's happening tonight with Todd? He's getting together with a bunch of his football friends to watch the draft.
So
that's what Todd's doing tonight. Don't let him fool you that I'm going to be so bored. I'm going to go to work. We're going to be around the draft.
If it were me, I'd just show up with a cooler and like a six-pack and just crack open some cold ones.
Yeah.
And
that's why it's not you, apparently, that they're taking out there. So
there's nothing wrong with that.
They want somebody professional, I guess.
That is professional. I'm a professional
party
boy.
Guy. You're a professional
Fun
party
guy.
boy? Is that what you are?
What's his name from Jackass? No, I'm just
Party boy?
yeah.
Chris
Literally mean party
Pontius.
boy.
Chris Pontius, thank you, Dylan.
Party boy. Hey, the guy who's a party boy. What's his name? Party boy? Yeah, that's it.
I'm just saying. That shouldn't be frowned upon. Hey, a couple months ago, I was the big boy. I was the sturdy man.
Yeah, good for you. But no, it's he gets to hang out with a bunch of people that love the NFL and watch the draft with them.
Yeah.
There's nothing to complain about like that. Come on, man. It's all good in the hood. But yes, if I had my druthers, it would be the Chiefs having a lot more fun tomorrow night. Than they have tonight, and we'll find out what happens.
Hear me out.
That. I'm going to hear you out of
Luther Burden is there at 31.
Yes.
Do you still prefer the Chiefs to trade back? Yeah.
Well, I guess it would also depend like who else is there. So and how far they would have to trade back.
Let's just say he's gone, but the next time the Chiefs would pick, even if they trade back.
But is like Derek Harmon still there? You know what I mean? Like
no. Harmon, Grant, and Walter Nolan, and then Luther Burden is the guy there. It's Luther Burden, or maybe you can say Connerly. I'll give you Connerly if you want him.
Now, after listening to Daniel Harms say Josh Connolly is a lesser version of Kingsley.
Yes, that's what I've been perpetuating too.
I would not want Josh Connerly there. I would be very, very scared about the Chiefs taking Josh Connolly. So if trading back and getting Josh Connolly as opposed to Luther Burden, I'll take Luther Burden there at number 31.
Okay.
I'll be good with that.
I just think it's an interesting conversation because I think it's the actual real conversation that could be had at that time.
But I do wonder, too, like they had that Zoom call with Travion Henderson just the other night. And are they doing their homework in case they're drafting anywhere from 33 to 40-something? Yeah. Hey, we're going to look at some of these running backs. That perfect spot is going to be right there. The strength of the running back class, Daniel Harms saying round 2 to 4 is where the real strength is of the running back class. He also has Omarion Hampton rated above Ashton Genty. Sounds like a pretty smart fella.
Well, what's funny is Omarion Hampton has been just rising up draft boards, and I've now seen the potential of him going, 22 to Denver? Is Denver at 22?
Yeah.
I've seen Denver being a team that snags Omarion Hampton that early.
Yeah, and it looks like there's a connection with a lot of different teams in certain spots and areas. It seems to be like common themes that are there, and we'll find out. It's just so difficult at 31 to be like, all right, can you trade back? And it's like, okay, well, are there like 3 or 4 guys that you didn't expect to be there, and you could trade back to 34? Like, oh, you know what? Not bad. Okay, let's do that. What are you picking up in the meantime as well? Is it just a 4th rounder? Are you getting a 5th rounder and maybe losing a guy that you feel like could be a difference maker this year in the next few years to take a chance on a guy who's in the 5th round when Brett Veach is already talking about that there are less players in that group of those day 3 guys that are potential lottery tickets that you get, like that crop. There's lesser than of those, and so we'll find out how that comes about tonight. I thought this quote was interesting from Jordan Schultz, and this came out about an hour ago. Jordan Schultz, and now he has a picture of Shedeur Sanders. So it doesn't specifically mention and say anything about Shedeur, but he's got a picture of Shedeur Sanders. And Jordan Schultz says, spoke to a high-level NFL executive today about the draft and came away with a lot of respect for this one thing he said. Quote, the anonymous negative quotes that pop up every year. Total garbage. If you've got something to say, put your name on it or keep it in-house. Every team has access to similar intel. Nobody's dumb enough to read a tweet and suddenly pull a guy off their board. This is supposed to be a celebration for these players, the biggest weekend of their lives. And instead, some people try to torpedo them for clout. Enough already. It's embarrassing for the league, said anonymous NFL executive.
3 quick things. He's making fun of anonymous people whilst being anonymous.
Bingo.
2, those people that put that out, they're getting asked to put their thoughts out. It's not like they're just firing up the Twitter account and saying, let me talk mean about some guy. No, they're being asked about a player. And then 3, if they're doing it for clout, how the bleep is it an anonymous?
Those are the 2 things. The middle one is the one I didn't think of, but the first one was, so an anonymous executive is saying, these anonymous quotes are BS. It's embarrassing. They're chasing clout. Most people that are clout chasers aren't doing it anonymously. Like, that's not. They're pretty much. It's almost the exact opposite of anonymous if you're chasing clout. Like, those things can't be combined. Those are 2 completely conflicting ideologies of chasing clout and anonymous.
Possibly be the same thing. So, honestly, the premise behind the whole. If you cut out the last word or the last sentence, I kind of get where he's coming from. As far as, maybe we don't need to be all negative about this. But again, people are being asked these questions. Yeah. What are they going to say? Everyone's phenomenal. Everyone's going to be a Hall of Famer? That's just absurd.
And a lot of it is some frustration surrounding Shedeur Sanders and the commentary that's there. Like, there are a lot of anonymous people that have said that, how he is in meetings, driving a separate car to the game rather than going with his teammates. What happens when he's not around daddy, and everything being catered to him, diva, right? Like, all of these different things around him. He's
Friends
it
didn't
feels
go to his
entitled.
birthday party.
Didn't find the $100 in the back of the playbook.
But
right?
real question: When was the last time you've seen a player where his former NFL player dad, or just professional player dad, has been used as a negative? Because Patrick
Brandon Rice, maybe.
No, from quarterback's perspective, I'll give you one and only.
Yeah, not
I'll give you one and only because I'm sort of familiar with it. Is Brian Brom, that played, and now Jeff Brom, his brother, is the head coach at Louisville. Was at Purdue, coached at Purdue when George Karlaftis was there. But Brian Brom was viewed as like, well, this guy's played for his dad his whole life. And is what's going to happen when he leaves the city that he grew up and lived his whole life in, around his family and his dad, and everything sort of catered for him, and the offense there catered for him, so they can get this guy and the Brom family. They're, they run the city when it comes to football, and he went from being a guy that maybe is a first rounder to the Packers in the second round, and then some of the indications were that once it started going bad, it just started collapsing. Yeah. Once that insulation was no longer there. That would be I don't know if there's another one where there's a positive on the other side of it that's like, no, this guy's just going to make it. And I'm not saying that's going to be the same thing for Shedeur Sanders. He might be a guy that just is going to mentally break through and not around my dad, whatever, cool, let's go play football. There's one thing you can't question about Shedeur. He takes hit after hit after hit, and he gets right back up. That dude is tough as nails. And I think if you're going to earn the respect of the locker room, being a tough dude is a way that you earn the respect of your peers pretty quickly to get them to follow you, as opposed to Anthony Richardson that was a little tired and wanted to come out of the game because he had just run like 15 yards. Yeah. So he needed to come out of the game on like a third down. He was kind of winded. These guys understand and they see it, and it's, I will go to battle with this guy because he's getting hit after hit after hit, and he's getting right back up. So hell yeah, let's go to war with this dude.
I guess for me, I'm not saying Shedeur has been perfect. There's obviously a couple things that stand out that I think should come off maybe as me first, or I guess me first would probably be the right way of putting it. But I do think he's getting penalized for some of the stuff like his dad says or his dad's personality, which I think is a little unfair. That's why I do think Shadur is actually going to be a fine NFL quarterback. Notice I said fine. I don't think great. I don't think bad. Again, I think he's going to be a fine NFL caliber quarterback. I just because Patrick Mahomes, again, a little different, but is baseball. But that was always used as a positive. Bobby Witt Jr., his dad, always used as a positive.
100%.
And it's almost always used as a positive when you're Vladimir Guerrero Jr. versus his dad, right?
Grew up around professional athletics, knows what it's like, understands the locker room, the clubhouse, etc.
And so I guess I don't know. I've just found it a little fascinating. It's being used against Shadur. Again, Deion's different. We know this. He's for better or worse. Deion's Deion, right? He's prime time.
I also think Shadur gets a So Deion, let's look at a local connection. Eli Drinkwitz coming out and attacking people that were booing Brady Cook and not viewing Brady Cook as, good enough to play quarterback at Mizzou. And Eli came out and he was pissed off. Yeah. He was mad, not happy about it. Okay. Deion Sanders is not happy about the way that Shadur is being treated. The difference is people hear Deion Sanders and go, oh, wow, daddy's coming to your defense.
Sure.
People hear Eli Drinkwitz and go, head coach of the Missouri Tiger football program is coming to the defense of a guy who he truly believes in. Well, then what's the head coach of Colorado going to do when his quarterback is being talked about a certain way and he's been around said quarterback? Almost every coach is going to come to the defense of certain players, but it's being viewed from Shadur as, well, yeah, daddy's coming to his defense. Daddy's got to speak up and try to take up for him.
But when your dad is the coach, again, you're going to have – it's part of –
But isn't it always he's a coach's
unfair.
son? Oh, he's a coach's son. Coach's son. Basketball players, oh, dude's a coach's son, man.
Yeah.
Understands ball. Coach's son, This one is, well, he's a coach's son, so good luck,
Yeah, I get it.
It's odd.
That's kind of my thought is it feels like he's being labeled under Deion when he's his own man.
Yeah.
He's
right.
his own
Patrick,
man.
it was a positive.
Yeah.
It was always a positive. This guy is from a pro family. His dad pitched in baseball. This guy knows what it's like. He's going to run the locker room. He understands. He's spent his life in locker rooms. But that particular quote from Jordan Schultz of these anonymous quotes pop up every year, and it's embarrassing, said the anonymous NFC executive or NFL executive to Jordan Schultz.
Man, so good.
If you're going to say that about it, why wouldn't you just put your name on it?
Yes.
Why do you have to be anonymous there when you're going, the anonymous negative quotes pop up every year, it's garbage. If you've got something to say, put your name on it or keep it in-house. Every team has access to similar intel. Nobody's dumb enough to read a tweet and suddenly pull a guy off their board. This is supposed to be a celebration for these players, the biggest weekend of their lives. What's wrong with an NFL executive putting their name on that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Said Chris Ballard. Oh, okay. Yeah. Said Mike Borgonzi. Oh, okay.
Said Dylan Michaels,
said
the
Dylan,
NFL historian.
Said Brett Veach. Right? I mean, nobody would go, wow, I can't believe that NFL executive said that. God, wow, you actually put your name on that? That's not one of those to where, you're trying to get, and it is, I don't know about chasing clout, but some of it is also, you put something out there, and I think it would only be natural. So let's say, you're the Chiefs, you're Brett Veach, you're in the war room, you're getting ready and everything. You've been doing all the stuff you've been doing for a freaking year, right? Everything. And then the day before, word or, as this person says, intel comes out about a certain player. It would only be natural to go, okay, did we miss something?
Yeah.
Let's acknowledge this. Okay, did we miss something? Is this a smokescreen? Is this a team that we believe wants this player and they would like it to slide, like that player to slide down? Or have we missed something and we need to readdress this? I think they put in way too much work the entire year for them to look at it and go, oh, they said this about that guy. Who cares? Nope, we just are going to dismiss it. Yeah. Well, yeah, they've done all their work as well. Doesn't mean that somebody else couldn't have uncovered or found something that was there that you didn't necessarily turn over that stone. It could be just as simple as that. You talk about anything you put on tape will make the other team spend time and reps practicing for. Well, you know what? We're going to make all these other teams spend time trying to dig into what they think this quote is about. So let's put this quote out there because now they have less time to prepare. or less time in their war room or draft room, whatever it might be. It's all silly season, lying season, everything. The player's the player who you're going to get. And at this point, if you're changing anything at this point, then it's paralysis by analysis. Then you didn't truly believe in it to begin with.
I would just be throwing smoke screens everywhere. They'd be wild. 7
different types of smoke.
I'd be like, he wears socks with sandals.
Oh, my God, he does?
Yeah.
Tucks it in with no belt?
He wears jeans on the beach. When he goes to the pool, he wears a pool shirt over it. Yeah.
Well, he doesn't. He's just being protective of his body in the sun.
I guess.
That's somebody that's smart, is what that is.
Doesn't wear sunscreen when the UV is above 9.
That's dumb.
And he gets sunburned easily.
That's dumb. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
These are the smoke screens that I would use.
Yeah. Chooses In-N-Out Burger over some other well-established, better burger joints.
Well,
these are things that are questionable.
In-N-Out does slap. In-N-Out is very good.
No, you should slap that guy down your board if that guy chooses that. You slap him right on down.
Slap him 5 for being smart.
Nope.
These are the things.
Uses lots of barbecue sauce on his barbecue. Can't really trust that guy.
Uses ketchup. Instead of barbecue sauce, use ketchup.
So
immediately goes to the steak sauce at a steakhouse. Like, doesn't
100%.
fry the steak. For
Will
the
not
chef.
trust. You know what that tells me? Will not trust your play call.
Exactly. There you go.
Knows
Gets his
exactly what
steaks
play
well
call
done.
Disrespectful to authority.
he knows exactly what play call he wants, and that's what he's going to run because he's uncomfortable trusting you or the chef that this is actually what is going to be beneficial. 100%, dude. That's a great one. That's a really good one. But Mahomes uses ketchup, so you don't like Mahomes there, Sterling?
I love Patrick. I don't like his taste in
condiments.
No, I was gonna say ketchup's it's so weird that it's not steak sauce. So the chef's like, oh, well, I can't do anything about that. If someone wants to put ketchup on their steak, I can't.
I guess it's
not
so
A1. It's so off
random.
the wall that he can't
not
even
A1.
hate it.
It's both.
Throw mustard next time. Just really confuse him. Yeah, can I get some mustard for this?
Mustard on a steak.
Mustard for what, sir? Oh, for the steak, of course. What do you mean for what?
Did you get a bratwurst? No, for the steak. Oh, why is that? I didn't even look around. Is that odd? Do you guys are we not in the trust tree? Like, do you guys not have mustard on your steak? So
mustard. Okay, hot take. Mustard on your fries is better than ketchup. There, I said it.
That's dumb.
There, I said it.
That's dumb. You're stupid. You're so stupid. Gosh, you're so dumb. You should have said that anonymously so that nobody would know that you actually said that.
Anonymously, I think mustard is better than ketchup on fries. Anonymously, of course.
I'd rather have mayonnaise on fries than mustard.
Psycho.
I'd rather do that. Freaking mustard on. Put mustard on the brat on the dog. Go with it. Go with it.
Mustard's my number 1 draft pick.
Yeah.
Mustard's Kenneth Grant. Ketchup. Josh Simmons. Look at the colors of the jerseys even.
There it is.
Connerly's
exactly
mayo.
Right. Nails. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll play a couple of clips from interview that we conducted on Monday with Field Yates and Cynthia Freeland in just recapping what they're thinking about the draft coming up tonight. We'll do that on the other side of the break. More Zone next. All right, hanging out at Hollywood Casino here on this Thursday, draft day edition of The Zone, heading up until 2 o'clock. The program with Soren Petro comes your way at 2 o'clock, and I think they are done at midnight. It's because you got the NFL Draft Show coming up at 6 o'clock with Soren and Curtis and Mark Borichter and Kyle. Those that quartet, they will be taking you all through the draft. We'll hear all the picks, and they'll have the breakdown of all of that and how it relates to the Chiefs as they get closer, maybe trading up, maybe trading back. I don't know. We'll find out, or just simply selecting at number 31. So they've got that for you, and it's all right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Hollywood Casino, our location today. You've got till 5 o'clock to get here to register to win the Nick Bolton autographed jersey. And we will do the drawing at 5 o'clock. And tonight, 7 o'clock, when the actual draft gets underway with the Tennessee Titans on the clock. Earlier this week, I want to play back a couple of chunks from conversations that we had with Field Yates and Cynthia Freeland. Some interesting stuff in sort of discussing and talking about a few ways of looking at and analyzing the draft tonight, and certainly the second and third round, and then the final rounds of the draft on Saturday. But Field Yates from Monday, we started off with sort of from the Chiefs' perspective, better to maybe trade up or trade back if you are specifically in the shoes of the Kansas City Chiefs, Field Yates?
So I think if I'm the Chiefs, they are a little bit different than some of the other contenders. If I'm Buffalo or Detroit or Baltimore, teams that have been on the precipice but haven't gotten over the hump with their great quarterbacks or great rosters, you're saying to yourself, you know what? I'm going for the big dog, and I'm finding whoever it is. Like, I am going to find that difference maker, because if we win one championship, even if we are bereft of draft capital and our depth is tested in a couple of years, we got that Lombardi trophy. You never have to say sorry for winning a title. For the Chiefs, they already know what the reality is of being highly successful multiple years in a row. It's that you're going to have to make some difficult decisions and part ways with guys like Joe Tooney, right? Or in prior off seasons, trading away Tyreek Hill or trading away L'Jarius Sneed. And obviously, they've been able to more than handle the losses, but it also means that they know, like, that's not stopping anytime soon, right? Like, they're going to be successful for a long time, and they've got players that are deservedly under contract for big money. They're going to have to continue to nail the draft. So I'd be more inclined to chip away at the depth of this class, because I do think that, hey, yeah, obviously it's exciting when you can get a guy who's one of the top 10 or 12 players in this draft class. But for the Chiefs to realistically get one of those guys, moving up from 30 to even if a guy makes it to 15, I mean, what's that costing you? It might cost you, a lot of your draft capital this year. Or if some team says we want to dip into your draft capital for next year, there's just too much variance in that I would be more of the mind of, hey, let's just continue to build what we have, because we really think the floor for our roster is already so high every single year, and we think the ceiling is pretty darn high too, right? I mean, the only team in league history to go to 5 Super Bowls in 6 seasons. We always have to be mindful of balancing our short and long-term needs.
Is this a year maybe that we could see a team looking to move back into the first round to get the 5th-year option on a quarterback, that it might be more conducive than in years past for the Chiefs to trade back?
Yeah, I'm working on my final mock draft as of right now, and I did not have any trades, including those at the back end of the process in my initial run of it, which I will note is subject to change. I can change it until about Wednesday afternoon, and then the editors from ESPN.com say, all right, no more fussing around. Let's just get this mock draft on the websites by tomorrow morning, because I think Brett's point is well taken. We talk about it a lot, but how much we've actually seen it in practice, I think, is a different part of the conversation. The Ravens famously did it with Lamar Jackson, but even the Ravens, I think, would have to admit they had some reservations on Lamar, right? I mean, if they were so sold on him, they wouldn't have bypassed him for Hayden Hurst earlier in that draft, right? So it takes a pretty unique set of circumstances for a team to not be willing to take the quarterback earlier in the draft and then taking them later in the first round, especially because every team has its pick this year. It's not like, hey, if New Orleans didn't have number 9 and, hey, they're really desperate to get up into the end of the round 1 because it would be their only pick so far in the proceedings, maybe it has a little bit more weight to it. But I do think you're calculating it correctly. It may not be, or maybe Brett is, may not be as likely. But there might be some teams, like where I could see it happening is while there are players that will be good players into round 2, there are some teams that I think are at the top of the second round that are trying to get better in a relative hurry. The Patriots are always a team that I think of in this category based off how they have spent this offseason, right? They had, 4 wins last year, and it's not like this roster right now is ready to make a deep playoff run, but they may say to themselves, hey, if we get an offensive tackle at 4 and there's a wide receiver that we can't let risk we can't risk having him being taken at 36 when we're picking at 38 or whatever they are. Maybe you call up a Kansas City or Philadelphia who you figure are willing to play ball and move down those 7-8 spots to get to their preferred target. The fifth-year option is a bonus, but it's more about beating others to the punch. The Tennessees of the world, whoever else at the top of the draft, the second round, the Giants and the Browns and some of these teams that might have interest in those same prospects. So I think there will be some level of a market, but I certainly wouldn't call it a guarantee. I think probably if you gave me the option to say the Chiefs pick at 31 or don't, I certainly lean towards picking at 31.
I know that Josh Simmons has been mocked to the Chiefs a lot at number 31. Is he a guy that if he's there at 27 or 28 that the Chiefs may get a little antsy and say maybe that fourth rounder that's there, they don't have a fifth and a sixth, maybe that fourth rounder is worth it to move up to 3 spots to go and take Josh Simmons if he's there at that spot?
Yeah, so not only is Josh Simmons a logical target for the Chiefs are a logical landing spot for Josh Simmons for these reasons. Everybody who has listened to our coverage of the draft, anybody who loves the draft knows Josh Simmons coming off of a torn patellar tendon suffered in October. So you're going to have to be patient here, even though the medical reports have been encouraging since his surgery took place. But let's just be honest. There's a difference between return to play and return to performance are two very different metrics. So you just don't know exactly when you're going to get the same version that you had of Josh Simmons prior to this injury. I say that because the Chiefs can say, well, we signed a left tackle in free agency for 2 years and $30 million, which is reflective of a player that I think they believe can be their starter, but I don't think it's enough money that the Chiefs would say, hey, Jalen Moore, you're the guy, and we're not doing anything about it for the next couple of seasons. So Simmons is one of the harder players to find a spot for in a mock draft, not because he isn't great, but because he's coming off of a major injury that I'm just not a doctor, right? And every team is going to have a little bit different tolerance for what a patella tendon timeline is. And then also on top of that, how much he will look like his old self after a patella tendon. I'm not saying this is like a compromising injury every single time you see it. It's also not an ACL tear where we've gotten to the point where if a guy tears his ACL, it sucks, but you expect him to look like himself within 9 or 10, 11, 12 months, right? We have seen plenty of players come back and be their prior self after an ACL tear. So on Simmons, he's just an incredibly natural pass protector. The way that he moves his feet is effortless. He was excellent for Ohio State prior to that injury. He didn't allow a single pressure, much less a sack, prior to getting hurt back in mid-October. A guy who's played guard as well at the collegiate level. So some positional versatility, some legitimate pass protection skills. And for a quarterback who obviously is elite, but also a quarterback who's not afraid to kind of mix up where he ends up in the pocket, right? Patrick Mahomes, one play might take 3 steps, one play might take 7 steps, one play he might take 7 steps and then dance around. Like those offensive linemen have to obviously hold up their end of the bargain for a prolonged period of time, like they do for any quarterback who can scramble. That is one of the realities of pass protection in the NFL these days. You got to move a quarterback. It's great because he can get himself out of pressure, but he also usually holds on to the football longer, which means you got to find a way to do your job longer as well. So I think Josh Simmons would be really solid for the Chiefs if he somehow gets there to 31. But I'm starting to think more and more like he could be an early 20s type player with some teams that could use an offensive tackle, whether they're in the order right there right now or like Kansas City, they would be willing to move up a few spots to get a player of Simmons' caliber.
All right, a couple quick ones for you. I know you got to go, but Josh Simmons, you've got him ranked right behind Connerly in your top 200. Is that injury specific or?
Yes, 100%. Yep.
Okay. Want to say.
It's sort of hedging a little bit for a player that, you just don't know exactly what you're going to get.
Oh, there we go. Oh, we lost programming. Oh, are we up? Are we up? We good? Oh, my bad. Dylan, are we on right now? Are we live? I don't believe you.
bleep it. I'll do it live.
Sterling, let's keep having the conversation we were having anyway.
Yeah,
I don't believe Sterling.
So that blackjack table is about to get
$15.
$15.
That's not
Dylan,
bad.
I went and waltzed around, and
Dylan, let me know when we're back live.
Yeah,
Just
and
let
I
us
was
know what we're
waltzing
talking about.
around. I was waltzing around.
I don't believe you.
And
funny joke.
I like the band live. They're coming to play with Collective Soul soon, right?
Beep bop boop. You're fired too. We're back live. So there's Field Yates, and interesting. He's got Josh Simmons right behind Josh Connerly, while Daniel Holmes is not a fan of Connerly at all. So everybody's got that beauty in the eye of the beholder, and this draft this year certainly has its strengths and its weaknesses. And Cynthia Freeland, talking with her about her view of how this draft is viewed.
We always sort of judge whether or not we intend to, or it's just like our unconscious bias about like quarterbacks determining the strength of the draft class. This isn't as strong of a quarterback or wide receiver draft as ones we've had in recent years. So it feels like last year we set history, with how many quarterbacks were selected up top, and it felt like, whoa, like everything's different. And that's maybe not as that's not going to happen this year. And it's unlikely that we see even 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round period, full stop. So I don't think that this is a draft where this is a flavor draft. This is one where you're going to get the chance to see how good your scouting departments are, how well your team can construct their kind of what is a Chief. Can we execute against these objectives that we determine are those that define a Chief? And that's, or whatever, insert your team name there. Mm-hmm. So that's where you're going to see in this one. And it helps when you don't need a quarterback in this situation. Yeah. It helps when you don't necessarily, there's some really key pieces. It's good that you don't need to figure out which of the defensive front guys is going to be your anchor. You can have nice, great pieces to, augment that. And there's some nice, it's a weird draft because there's old and there's young. And this is a weird, post-pandemic, now the transfer portal and NIL all at the same time, the confluence of, you see guys who are 27 years old and guys who are not even 21 yet. So it is a wild draft.
As we look through the lens of the Chiefs and some of their needs, if the Chiefs were to go defense, I do wonder if they look at it and go, okay, so if the defensive end makes up the strength of this defensive line, but there are some difference-making defensive tackles that once they're off the board, there may be a drop-off. Would that be more likely then to take a defensive tackle at 31 and come back around later in the draft at 66 and take a defensive end or something else? If that's or 63, I should say, if that's the case?
I think the scarcity of it all is going to rule the day. I think you should also maybe throw in a corner there, too, for things that you could look at on the defensive side of the ball from the standpoint of, speedy, young, and then giving yourself some flexibility at a really expensive position. So, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, all right, you could view it as the one thing that I really like about this Kansas City run of being so dominant between Andy Reid and Brett Veach is that it doesn't feel like they're ever married to one player. It doesn't feel like first of all, you're picking so stinking low, like you're never really going to be able to mock draft enough time to be able to figure out who's going to be available for sure. So, I think they do a really good job of having options and letting scarcity and the board come to them, if you want to call it like that, right? I believe that they do a really good job of saying, all right, the incremental difference between defensive end or defensive tackle, we think we can get guy 2 down here. We have 4 picks in 100. We can move around. Friday should be a really exciting day for Chiefs fans. Maybe not from it's a Friday night. You got nothing else to do but watch rounds 2 and 3 of the draft, obviously. But you're looking at that and you're saying, okay, they could move all over the place to get the guys that they want in that second round. So let the first round come to them because it is so much more expensive to switch around in the first round than it is to switch around in the other rounds. And the other thing about defensive tackle that I'm like, well, maybe they wait on that is defensive end is a very expensive position. Yeah. And if it's a defensive tackle that won't command as much of the cap space in in 5 years, remember you get that 5th-year option from first-round guys versus second-round guys. So maybe it would be worth it to look at an edge rusher in that case, or a corner perhaps even because they're a more expensive position. You get 1 more year on the rookie pay scale.
From the Chiefs' perspective this year, and this has been a debate going around Kansas City here with the first round, Josh Simmons has been mocked to the Chiefs a lot, and the only reason he would be there is because of that patellar injury. And if he did not tear that, he would probably be gone in the top 20. Maybe he'd be the number one tackle off the board if he finishes the season. And we see him then perform in the playoffs, right, against some top tier talent and look like that. He may be, who knows? We might be talking about Simmons being a top 10 pick. But where would you go with this? The Chiefs have been looking for that left tackle for a while, and obviously you can't even know, even if you take Josh Simmons, that he's going to be the answer. But given this exercise in creating this hypothetical, he is the answer, but it's not till 2026. How do you go about it if you're Brett Veach?
I mean, I'm looking at my 401k today, which I wouldn't advise anyone to do, and the volatility is not making me happy. So perhaps that's coloring my ability or appetite for risk at this point. But I'm taking someone who can compete right away.
Okay.
I understand that protecting Patrick Mahomes is absolutely the most important thing possible, but I also believe that perhaps the joint effect of getting a marquee running back or a guy who's a real three down running back, and also getting whatever is substitute available, because if you can't potentially use him this year anyways, you don't really know. And that future, I don't know if my investment in the future, especially, it's not like you have your quarterback not on a rookie pay scale. You got some pretty expensive guys there. I would go for immediate contributors, and this class next year has what it at least appears to now to be a better crop of guys coming out. So can you figure out a replacement, because you'd have to do it anyways.
Yeah, visiting with Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network. Is this a we look at some of the bottom half of the first round, and so many years we come away on a Friday morning talking about, man, it'd be nice, why didn't the Chiefs just trade back? Or, man, if they could have traded back and maybe got the same guy. Is this more or less likely of a team trading back into the first round to get maybe Shadir Sanders slides, or they like Jackson Dart or Tyler Shuck or something like that it would be 31, Chiefs are on the clock, and a team calls, and maybe they can trade back and get extra picks?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on where the runs are. If you have a defensive tackle run, then edge rusher, you could come back in there. You could add that to quarterback. I think a little bit of it will depend on your belief that, like, if a Jackson Dart falls far enough, but like, does Shador and Jackson Dart last past Pittsburgh?
Mm-hmm.
If they, and that's 21. So if they do, then you could say, okay, but would the Chiefs be the one you want to trade for with that? Because I would argue that, the Eagles, they're not really looking for quarterback. You'd be trading back in to get whatever, and the Eagles might, how he's always on the phone. They might allow for a trade that's more favorable for the team trading up, because he knows that, I think the gamesmanship of Howie in that might be like, you can go for us, we'll give you better deal. Like, so I don't know. You always need to have the trade partner, right? Absolutely. That's the biggest deal, is figuring out who the trade partner would be. And I just think, to me, the most likely suspect for a target for a trade would be to get ahead of, like, if you really wanted Shador, to get ahead of New Orleans at 8, and that's nowhere near the Chiefs.
We'll see if it's something like that tonight, that the Chiefs could be a candidate for somebody to trade up back into the first round and then trade back, and may not be selecting anybody tonight. We take a timeout. We come back. We will wrap up the show. One more segment to go. Our predictions, what we think happens tonight. We'll come up with a name that we think the Chiefs will take. We'll do that on the other side, hanging out at Hollywood Casino until 5 o'clock. You can win this Nick Bolton autographed jersey. We'll take a timeout. More Zone next. wrapping things up. Let's go quickly here. What do we think happens? Sterling, you're on the clock first.
Luther Burden. I've convinced myself in the last 24 hours it's Luther.
Luther Burden. Dylan, what say you?
I'm going to go trade up for Mike Green. Thundering
Okay.
Herd.
Ooh.
How far do they trade up?
24.
Number 24, okay.
Wow.
I also have a trade up. I have a slight trade up. They trade up to number 29, right ahead of the Bills, and they take Derek Harmon out of Oregon. So Derek Harmon is my pick, and in case they think the Bills might be going defensive line, whether that be edge or defensive tackle, they don't risk it, and they trade up ahead of the Bills 2 spots to go and take Derek Harmon tonight. Everybody enjoy the draft. Keep it locked right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB, and check out Hollywood Casino as well.